era? I
Well,
mean, they're not Nebraska where they still act like it's 15 years ago.
So is it the fan base that irritates you?
A little bit of both.
It's the team as well.
It's the team. It's the fan base. It's Heupel. It's the running up the score. It's a lot of things. They get me. So Braden Gall, we're gonna have some fun. Dylan, don't let him know. I see you back there. Don't let him know. We're gonna have fun. Mick Schaefer joins at 1 o'clock. I do want to talk some Chiefs, though, with you in this first hour, Jack. I want to talk some of the trades that were happening around the NFL. Obviously, that's the big storyline from yesterday. We touched on it towards the end of the show, right? We started to get some of that news coming out. Amari Cooper on the move to the Bills. Davante Adams on the move to the 2018 Green Bay Packers. The Jets.
I like it. I like it.
You think Eddie Lacy and like Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, they're going to all of a sudden...
Wouldn't that be something?
What's B.J. Raji up to?
Mm-hmm.
Do the Raji. What's he up to?
It's worked before, it can work again.
Clay Matthews might swing back through. I don't know. But the Chiefs were never going to get Davante Adams. So let's start with that first. Let's start with the because I do think Chiefs fans could have a gripe. I think Chiefs fans could feel a certain way about some of the moves, some of the trades that happened yesterday. Okay? But let's start with the unrealistic one, which was Davante Adams. One, it's the Raiders. Two, it's the Chiefs. That would take a lot for that to actually happen. Just being in the AFC West. Let's start there. Second, the money. The money wasn't going to happen because the Jets are taking on the entire contract of Davante Adams. They're taking on all of it. So what's that mean? Well, the Chiefs don't have the salary cap right now as it stands to take on that Davante Adams contract. So that means the Raiders were going to have to eat the majority of Davante's contract, which would mean the Chiefs would have to give up a lot more than what the Jets gave up. For a multitude of reasons, one being the Chiefs, they're going to probably be drafting 30, 31, 32 yet again. Mm-hmm. The Jets are probably in the 20s. So that means you have to give up more draft capital. It wasn't going to be the same swap. Davante Adams, to me, was never going to be a legitimate possibility. Are you with me here?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no way that the Raiders in a season like this would have traded their number one trade asset other than Max Crosby, though we know Max Crosby's not getting dealt. Their realistic trade option after they found out Davante Adams didn't want to play there anymore, and they capitalized on a team that's desperate. You know, that's what teams, when you're trading, you don't look for, you know, the best teams out there that are trying to be buyers or trying to upgrade. You kind of try to look for the teams that are desperate enough. The Jets are desperate enough. Why? Because this is their last year to make it work with Aaron Rodgers. I have no issue whatsoever with the Jets pushing some chips in to bring back Davante Adams to keep Aaron Rodgers happy, but also to try to rebound from this 2-4 start. And the Raiders knew that the Jets might be able to go that extra mile for a guy like Davante Adams. And when you're the Raiders and you look at the Chiefs in your own division, who are 5-0, yes, the Chiefs are bleeding in the receiver room just because they've lost so many guys there and they've lost depth in the running back room. They're not desperate. They're 5-0. They're the only undefeated team in the AFC. So why would you give them that extra boost when probably Kansas City wasn't going to give them a first-round pick or a second-round pick? Maybe when if Brett Veach called the Raiders and said, we want Davante Adams, they said, all right, well, we'll take a first-round pick. Then they said, yeah, we're going to hang up the phone there. We're not doing that. Because the Chiefs have already won a handful of games with what they have. So I think the Raiders looked at that, said, they're not going to give us the price we want. It's also the Chiefs. We're not going to go help them out. And that's what the Chiefs have to deal with the rest of this year. You're not going to get many AFC teams that are eager to deal with you. And in this case with Davante Adams, I gave it a 1% chance of happening. It would be an absolute, bonkers type of deal for that to go down, mainly because it's in division, it's the Raiders, and Davante Adams the money, as you brought up.
Yeah. So we got that one out. So if you are a Chiefs fan, I think you shouldn't feel any type of way about Davante going to the Jets. I don't think that, again, it was a possibility for a multitude of reasons. That's not the move that you should feel. Again, any type of way you want, I don't think you should be disappointed that Devontae is not a Chief. The other big move, Amari Cooper. Here's one where I understand some Chiefs' frustrations. Here's where I can understand if you feel, again, a certain type of way like your rich homie Quan out here. It's a pull. I don't know if disappointed is the right word, but I am a little, I don't want to say befuddled, a little sad that, and maybe we'll find out more after this really comes through. Maybe the Chiefs were in the Amari Cooper sweepstakes. Maybe they actually were involved and they just said, you know what? No, the Bills pick is going to be higher than the Chiefs. But the Chiefs had 2 third-rounders. They had one from the L'Jarius Sneed trade. They had the draft capital to get this deal done. This was the one really good wide receiver who was not under contract going forward. This was your rental that made sense. This was the rental that actually fell within the salary cap confines of Kansas City. The Bills, from the numbers I looked at, were 30th in salary cap. They were still able to get Amari Cooper. The Chiefs would have been able to as well. And that's where I guess I see some of the frustration, or at least the wonder, bubbling through. Because it was a Bills receive Amari Cooper and a 2025 sixth rounder. And the Browns receive a third rounder in 25 and then a seventh rounder in 26. So based on the numbers, maybe the Chiefs could have given either their own third rounder, which will be 30, 31, 32, and keep the, you don't have to do that sixth for a seventh swap, or even the Titans one, which we expect the Titans one's going to be really high in the third, really low, really high, however you want to view that, but a good third-round draft pick.
It felt doable, certainly from the beginning, once all the details came out about this deal. But I keep going back to who wants to deal with Kansas City? Or if they are picking up the phone, are they asking for the same thing they asked of Buffalo? I think there's reason to doubt that, because why would Brett Veach not pull the trigger on a deal like that for Amari Cooper? The only other possibility was that the Chiefs weren't that interested to begin with. Maybe they've got their eyes on somebody else, or at the end of the day, maybe they feel good about what they have right now. And I'm, of the belief that if you can't bring in somebody that can move the needle, that can really make an impact, I don't see a need to make that.
But Amari is. You played 3 wide receivers, basically 3 wide receivers last week.
Yeah.
You didn't play Sky or McCole. It was Juju, Justin Watson, who I believe led the team in snaps without a single reception, and then Xavier Worthy.
Yep. I think Amari Cooper would have moved the needle, but for what he went for in Buffalo, there's only 2 options. Either Cleveland was asking for more for Kansas City, or the Chiefs weren't that interested. I mean, there could be that possibility. I mean, Andy Reid is somebody that doesn't always like the plug and play, where you just find somebody from another organization, bring him into the system, have him take a few weeks to learn the offense. Because what we saw last week against New Orleans, yes, a Saints team that isn't very good, but with a full week of prep, I thought the offense moved the ball pretty well. You had guys step up. Now, maybe that's just an outlier. Maybe that's just 1 week, and then the further you get into the season, the harder it's going to be, because a lot of guys in your receiver room just aren't highly talented wide receivers. They're not the Rashee Rice. They're not the Hollywood Brown. You got a rookie as your number 1 wide receiver. But if the Chiefs weren't interested and they either have their eyes on somebody else, which at this point, other than Deontay Johnson, I'm not really sure who would make the most sense.
Yeah.
I just am in the camp of, if you're going to make a trade just to make a trade, just to bring in some depth piece, I don't know why you would, to be honest with you. Amari Cooper felt like the last guy that if you made a move, he could have an impact this year. A pretty big one at that, because you could put him into this offense. He, by far and away, is the number 1 wide receiver. Now, when you get down the ranks a couple more spots, does Deontay Johnson transform the offense? Does it really give the offense the boost that Amari Cooper could? We know Devontae Adams would have given a boost. Yeah. That was never really a thought. But Amari Cooper, to me, was the last true option to make this offense really click, or maybe get close to what they had with Rashee Rice and maybe if Hollywood Brown was there. But we have the feeling that Hollywood Brown's going to be back come playoff time. So in the meantime, over these next 12 games, in my opinion, it's about winning 7 of them. You get to 12-5. I feel like 12-5 is a 1 or a 2 seed. Your acquisition becomes Hollywood Brown. Who knows what he looks like? But that's also the up in the air right now of going out there and getting a wide receiver. I like Deontay Johnson in Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh didn't want to trade him to Kansas City because they didn't want to trade him to contender.
But now he's a Panther.
Now he's in Carolina.
Yeah.
So it could happen, right? It could make sense, and I could eat my words, and Deontay Johnson would come in and be a great receiver for the Chiefs. But maybe they look at it and say, oh, at this point, if we're going out there and not getting a true difference maker, does it really make sense to go out there and make a move?
Yeah, and Deontay's in the final year of his current contract. The Panthers would have to take on some of the money, which would mean the Chiefs would more than likely have to send back a higher draft pick if they were to not eat or if they were to take on all the money, right? So that's kind of how the transition works there. I do think Deontay is a needle mover. I do think depth is important, which we can get to with MVS being released by the Buffalo Bills and the corresponding move with Amari Cooper coming in. This is probably happening, isn't it? This is going to end up being the move, and Chief fans are not going to be happy. But this was probably the move all along, wasn't it?
Yeah, I would be pretty surprised if MVS is not a Chief by the end of the week.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised if MVS was not a Chief by the end of the week.
I could see him coming in and just being the number 5 and number 6, which, hey, I mean, it's a guy that knows the system. This is not going to be a popular take, but it's a guy that knows the system. It's a guy that showed up in the playoffs last year. And I ask you the question of if it came down to MVS or Sky Moore on the field, who do you want? I might lean a little bit more toward MVS. Or do you feel like now that he would be a number 5, number 6, other than a number 3 or a number 2 in last year's offense? A number 4, maybe. Okay, so a couple slots down. You could probably feel a little bit better. And also, how often, I say this so many times, how often are number 4s and number 5s getting out there on the field? It's not like
for the Chiefs this last week, what was it? Number 4 was either McColl or Sky, and they played 7 snaps.
Yeah. So 7 snaps there. If you brought in MVS, would you rather have 7 snaps for MVS or 7 snaps for Sky Moore? There are people that are believers in Sky Moore, and you say, hey, special teams is a big part of this team. We would like to have depth there where MVS isn't going to be a special team guy. He's going to be out there as a receiver. This has Chiefs written all over. This is what Brett Veach does. He brings back guys that were let go, or you can make a trade like last year's McCole Hardman. It's a guy that you don't need to worry about teaching him the offense, getting on the same page as Patrick Mahomes. And maybe they just go to Patrick Mahomes and say, hey, we know the receiver room is depleted right now. Would you like, we're still looking for other options out there, but does this make sense for this offense? Do you feel like he could click here again? And Patrick Mahomes can give a simple yes or no, and then that might be the answer when it's all said and done.
I will say, I saw Marquez Valdez-Scantling run one phenomenal route this year. He ran a curl route. I've never seen him run a curl route before. So at least he's got that going for him. I remember watching that game and I was cracking up. I never saw him do that once in Kansas City. Now he's doing it as a Bill.
I guess we can put to bed that Josh Allen's anywhere in the stratosphere of Mahomes, though, right? Because we don't have to go trade and be desperate for Amari Cooper last year or the year before. We just win Super Bowls.
Just make it work.
But they had to cut MVS, and we made MVS work. So. I don't know. I'm sorry. I was told this year that Josh Allen's going the Mahomes route where we're taking all the lumps with the contract, and we're just going to throw to insurance salesman because Josh Allen's so good. But apparently he's having his worst statistical season again outside of Stephon Diggs when he wasn't there.
Okay.
So.
First,
I didn't know.
I'm not disagreeing with you. That's very funny. We all know Mahomes is the best quarterback in the world. That's not.
Dan Orlovsky doesn't. That was more where that was directed.
Well, don't listen to Dan.
My bad. You're right.
Dummy Dan. We don't have to listen to him. Josh Allen's the second best quarterback in the NFL. Don't
by a
smirk.
wide margin.
He is by a wide margin, right? But it's Mahomes, gap, Josh Allen, gap. That's how the hierarchy, in my opinion, goes. Dylan seemingly is on the same page. Jack, you seemingly are less impressed by that, but sorry, you don't know ball. I'm with you, but also the Bills don't have the luxury of being back-to-back Super Bowl champions. The Bills have to try and make a move. They have never won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, if only they had a good roster those years to get over the hump.
If only they had, 4 chances maybe in 4 straight years.
Yeah, if only they had 6 or 7 Pro Bowlers every year. But yeah, we cut all those guys because we have Josh Allen. So we don't have Mitch Morse, we don't have Micah Hyde, we don't have Jordan Poyer, we don't have
Those
Stephon
guys are
Diggs
injured.
or Gabe Davis.
Come on.
So no, I'm just
Tre'Davious
asking.
White. Yeah, I know. I get it. Matt Milano. Funny, all those guys have been
Matt Milano's
injured.
actually injured on the roster, but
Yeah, true.
Tremaine Edmonds would be the guy they
There
let
we
walk.
go.
Yeah.
I just think it makes more sense for the Bills to do this when they have not won a Super Bowl ever. You're desperate. The AFC looks pretty open. Like, the Bills are still 4-2 with the struggles at wide receiver. The Jets have been bad. I'll get to them in one moment. The Dolphins look atrocious without Tua. They're, even when Tua comes back, it's probably too little too late. The Chiefs are good, but clearly they have some issues at wide receiver. The Ravens, I think, are good, but there's a lot of turnover on that team from the previous season. The Texans are a great team, too. But I think the AFC, for the most part, is pretty open, so the Bills are sitting here thinking, we didn't go all in this year, but maybe we should now. And so that's why I think it made sense for them to go out and get Amari Cooper. So I get what you're saying, Dylan, but I think they were.
Maybe the loss to the Texans, too, seeing what the Texans had as far as firepower goes as well.
Sure.
So,
no, I'm with you, because to me, it made a lot of sense for the Bills to make this move. And for the Jets, it made sense for them. Maybe you buy one more year with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe if Devontae's there, Rodgers says, I'm coming back for one more season to play with my guy. You went all in. You need to when you have an aging quarterback like that. And by the way, when was the last time the Jets won a Super Bowl? 56 years ago? 56 years
68,
ago.
yeah.
So they're more desperate than the Chiefs, too. So it's a little different mindset. When you're the Chiefs, you've won back-to-back Super Bowls. You did it last year with an offense and a wide receiver core that was eerily similar to this one. You say, all right, well, we still need to build. We're going to keep our draft picks. We're going to keep those third-rounders. Amari Cooper was most likely just going to be a rental, even though his contract was up. Doubtful they re-signed him here. Deontay might be a little different. The Chiefs aren't desperate. I know a lot of people are saying, well, it's a three-peat. It's history. I'm kind of in that boat, too. This is history. But they're not in desperation mode. They're still 5-0. The Bills, the Jets specifically, those are teams in my mind that are desperate.
You know, it's great that this team learned how to win a variety of ways, going back to last year. I mean, they didn't have an explosive offense, yet their defense became the best defense in the NFL. That's how they were able to make their push in January, because if the offense gave them a little bit, the defense could shut down elite quarterbacks like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Not so much Brock Purdy, but an elite coaching staff and an elite weapon room in San Francisco. But this is why I'm not worried right now if they don't make a move, because the whole point of going for the three-peat, it's not about the regular season. Yes, you want to put yourself in a good spot. You want home field. But as I said, you go 7-5, or what would that be? 7-5 over the final 12 games here. 12-5, I think, gets you the 1 seed in the AFC. If you think the Chiefs can go 7-5 with what they have and what's left on their schedule, then I don't believe you need to make a move, because your acquisitions will be Charles Omenihu coming back to the defensive line and Hollywood Brown.
Yeah.
And maybe Hollywood Brown isn't that good when he comes back. And maybe I could be wrong, and if they trade for Deontay Johnson, he's a difference maker, and he all of a sudden makes everybody better around him.
I love Deontay Johnson, by the way, so I would be thrilled.
Yeah. I mean, for people out there that are concerned right now, I just don't know why there would be a severe level of concern when you're 5-0. They've got a great defense, right? I think the majority of the games they play the rest of the way will not be outscoring teams. It will not be winning shootouts 40-37 because the defense is too good. You score 24 points, you're going to win a lot of football games. And I think this offense right now is good enough to score 24 points with what they have. A lot of it's going to come down to, can Kareem Hunt continue to give production that he has in these last 2 games? If he can't, and the running game becomes non-existent, now you've got that added pressure to the receiver room that's either inexperienced or just not good enough. And that would be the move that Brett Veach needs to make of, all right, we need extra help with the wide receiver. We need to give Patrick Mahomes more help because we can't beat some of these teams that we're going to be stacked up in the postseason if there's no running game and there's not really a threat to throw the ball and the defense starts slipping a little bit. Right now, the Chiefs are very blessed to have such a good defense and, for the most part, a healthy defense right now because they can hold down great offenses and take that pressure off the offense. And right now, even though they're down, their number one wide receiver, number two wide receiver, number one running back, it's still an offense, in my opinion, that can get you anywhere from 21 to 28 points. And if you score between 21 and 28 points in the final 12 games every single time, I think you can finish 7-5 and get that 12-5 record.
Winning ugly might be the mantra going forward. We'll take a break. We'll come back. More on that. I want to talk about the evolution of defenses in the NFL and how it actually might benefit Kansas City. The Zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB. Welcome back to the Zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB. Sterling Holmes, Dylan Michaels, Jack Johnson. No Jason Anderson, as he's being a good dad, taking care of a sick kid. Proud of him. I'm proud of you, Jason. We're proud of you on this show. Cynthia Freeland joins at 11 o'clock. Going to get a little analytical with her. Going to talk some analytics. And I have one number I'm going to bring up to you guys because I find this interesting. We keep talking about, is the offense going to break out? If this didn't happen or if that didn't happen, well, they'll be fine. They average 5.6 yards per play this season. 5.6. That is 14th, basically right in the middle. Their average, 5.6 yards per play in the NFL this season. Do you guys want to take a guess what they averaged in 2023, last year? Dylan, you might know.
I'm sorry, what was the first number? Setting up the, show.
Sorry that you... Come on.
I'm going to go lower than what the... I'm going to go lower.
I'm
going to guess lower than the first number.
Okay, thank you.
4.3.
So you think they averaged 5.6 this year and 4.3 last year?
Mm-hmm.
I'll go 3.6.
4.3 is New England, by the way, this year. So that just to put in perspective how bad 4.3 yards per
play.
play
Got to go
is.
higher.
My bad.
4.9.
That's Vegas and the Jets. No, they're the exact same, 5.6.
Okay.
Not really a trick question. It's more or less just...
We both thought it was.
Yeah, it was not a trick question. It's like when you see like a test and they give it to you like, this has to be a trick question. Like, no, it's pretty straight. It's the obvious answer. It's the easy one. 5.6. They averaged 5.6 yards per play last year. They averaged 5.6 yards per play this year. The one caveat I will say, they had Rashee Rice early on in the season, which was going to help boost those numbers. Over the last 3 games, the Chiefs have averaged 5.4 yards per play. Okay. This is who they are. They've shown us now for a year and a half, this is the offense. Yes, there's been a couple more turnovers, a couple more interceptions from Mahomes, but they're not super explosive. But I still think they can win this way. They have won this way. They just won the Super Bowl this way. They're 5-0 this way. They're getting better running the football. It's a lot more 12 personnel. Hell, we saw 14 personnel. Jody Fortson played more snaps. I think all 4 tight ends played more snaps than McColl or Sky. They're just getting bigger. When teams are saying, you're not going to beat us deep, we're going to have 2 safeties back. When linebackers around, which is something everyone listening right now, I've been trying to tell folks this. With linebackers becoming more and more focused on stopping the pass, with linebackers becoming more and more focused on guarding tight ends and running backs catching the ball out of the backfield, what happens? They get lighter. They're no longer as many Nick Boltons around. There's not as many downhill bruisers. So what does that do? Well, that can open up the run game. That allows guys like Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco to fall forward. They're not explosive running backs. But when you can get 4 and 5 yards a carry, the yards per play might not be quite as high as some of the other teams in the NFL, but you can still be effective and win ball games. And that's what I think we're seeing with the Chiefs. It's the evolution. It's the, okay, you're playing cover 2. Your linebackers are focused so much on the pass. You're dropping guys back in coverage. Well, now we're just going to run the football. Yes, we're no longer winning games by putting up 40 points. But as you're mentioning with an elite defense that the Chiefs have, they're even losing the turnover margin, and they're still winning games 23-17. I think this is the new Chiefs offense. This is who I think they are. This is who they've shown us they are over the past year and a half. I think we have to almost get used to it.
Yeah, you do have to get used to it. And it's why, other than the New England Patriots, they are the main dynasty in the NFL. And I more so mean, of course, the Brady New England Patriots. But the reason Brady's Patriots were able to be so good for 2 decades was because they had to win different ways every single year. If you went back to 2018 and looked at that Chiefs offense and number 1 in the league, Patrick Mahomes throws for 50 touchdowns. If that was your recipe every single year, we have to build an offense that can put up 35 points a game. Guess what? This dynastic run would have been over a handful of years ago. Because what did that 2018 team struggle with? Stopping anybody defensively. They gave up a ton of points.
Yeah.
So they had to adapt. And the next year, there was a little bit more of an emphasis on the defense, right? They bring in Tyrann Mathieu. They bring in Frank Clark. The COVID year, a little bit weird because there's not really a road environment you're having to play in. They went 14-2. But there was that emphasis, right, on, bringing back that offense to a level that it was in 2018. 2021, you have to go in there and overhaul the offensive line. You have to win a variety of ways. Last year, not a good offense. You win with your defense. And this year, it's kind of that same recipe. They have a much better defense. They've got a top defense in the league. And to me, when you look at these final 12 games, here's how you win the majority of them. Win with your defense, muddy it up, don't turn over the football. You're going to win a lot because you've got the best coach in the league, the best quarterback in the league. Think about how many teams out there right now, you take away their number 1 wide receiver, their number 2 wide receiver, their number 1 running back. You have an issue, kind of, at left tackle with, it could be Suamataia, it could be Wanya Morris. You factor in all of that to even the best teams right now, a Houston. Take away Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon and have an issue at left tackle for C.J. Stroud. What are the Texans right now? What would their record be? It makes you wonder.
They did lose Tank Dell, and they didn't lose Laramie Tunsil, but they did lose Joe Mixon for a while. They did lose...
But then factor in Diggs as well.
Correct. Yeah, because they did lose Nico. Didn't they lose Nico Collins for a bit?
Nico Collins is out now.
Yeah, Nico Collins. But Tank Dell is now back.
Yes. So they flipped from last year.
Yes.
Last year, Tank Dell was out and Nico Collins went off. This year, Nico Collins had a good start. He just, right now, as of the last 2 weeks, is on IR for hammy.
So you do that, or if you go to Cincinnati, they dealt with injuries a lot last year, but you take away a Jamar Chase, a T. Higgins, and then
we saw how that offense grinded.
We saw what happened. They couldn't make the postseason. Now Burrow wasn't healthy either. They had to turn to Jake Browning. But my point being is that the Chiefs really at this point in time might be the only team that can overcome this type of adversity and not just be good, but be the best team in the AFC. As I said, you get to 12-5, which a 7-5 record should be doable with what they have right now. That, to me, would be the best team in the AFC. That would be the number 1 team. And it's because they've learned how to win with their defense. You can shut down this offense coming up on Sunday against the 49ers. You don't need to win that game 35-30. If this defense wasn't very good, guess what? They would have had to go out there and acquire 2 wide receivers to help with this offense. But you don't need to. You don't need to rush that because there still are guys that are going to be coming back like an Isaiah Pacheco, like an Omenihu, and like a Hollywood Brown.
Yeah. Dylan, where are you at here? Where are you at with the Chiefs offense in regards to this being who they are, them continuously winning this way, even though Mahomes won his Super Bowl last year, saying it wasn't very fun. I guess part of me here also, Dylan, is do you want to win ugly? Or do you want to lose pretty?
I mean, yeah, it's the win ugly, and I know that's your answer as well, is that nobody cares about how you win. There's no explanation box next to the win column, so I don't really know why it matters that we have to score 30 points every single game. And they didn't last year and won the Super Bowl, and so it just shows that they don't have to be desperate and mortgage their future because they can win a multitude of ways with different teams. So I think they're fine. I don't think the offense is it better than last year, would you say? I think it is. I think it already is because of Xavier Worthy and Juju Smith-Schuster versus, Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney.
No, Rashee Rice.
I know, but he was a rookie. And he was
great.
half the season he was great. He came on late.
Phenomenal.
He came on late, so he didn't get a full season of Rashee Rice.
You can't say he was a rookie and then say Xavier Worthy, who's also a rookie.
I'm saying the speed factor of Xavier Worthy is different than a possession receiver, zone beater.
The over-the-top threat.
Yes, that's what's different on the offense this year, and everyone says that. There was actually a graph that said Xavier Worthy as a rookie has received less one-on-one coverage than Tyreek Hill already.
That's crazy. Which, again, is kind of going to my point of this is how I think the Chiefs can actually take advantage of the new defenses being thrown. When I say new, the most common defense being thrown around the NFL with cover 2 and the shell and everyone being so deep, right? Xavier Worthy is keeping defenses honest, while Kareem Hunt, and when Isaiah Pacheco comes back, is punishing light boxes. Would you guys agree this is the best the running back room has looked? Don't mark that. Why'd you mark that? What'd I say?
I don't know. It compelled me to mark that.
Dang it. You can't do that to me.
So we have Kareem Hunt and Carson Steele, you'd say, Jack?
Yeah.
And Isaiah Pacheco, when does he come back? December?
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's my point, though. Is this not maybe the most effective running back room we have seen in the past few seasons? Like, I know there's no Damian Williams as the home run hitter or any of that. I get that. I know it's not prime Kareem Hunt way back when. But as far as just the effectiveness of taking advantage of light boxes, it sure feels like they're taking advantage of these light boxes better than in years past.
I think so. I mean, this running back room, after bringing in Kareem Hunt, you've got a lot of confidence in. I mean, that was something after Isaiah Pacheco went down that it became worrisome to me. Now, it's kind of tough to say this because this was before the Rashee Rice injury, but I was far more concerned about the running back room when Isaiah Pacheco went down than I was about the wide receiver room when Hollywood Brown was announced that he was going to miss the entire regular season. Because who could you turn to after Pacheco went down? Carson Steele was an undrafted free agent rookie. Samaje Perine wasn't on an NFL roster back in August. And then you had Keontae Ingram get elevated from the practice squad. But Kareem Hunt coming in, still showing the burst that he has, can carry the ball damn near 30 times in a football game. Now you feel like when Pacheco comes back, the best part about it is they don't need to rush him back in. They don't need to put him back in when healthy and say, all right, we've been desperately needing you in all your production. Here's 20 carries a game. No, they could slowly bring along Isaiah Pacheco and still keep Kareem Hunt very involved. And to your point, Sterling, that would mean it is the most productive running back room because they haven't had a 1-2 punch like this in a long, long time. No discredit to Damian Williams and Darrell Williams. They were great in their own ways, but Kareem Hunt is a bruiser and somebody that clearly still has a burst, and Isaiah Pacheco was a guy that if he was healthy the entire year, if he played all 17 games, he would have gotten close to, if not over 1,000 yards rushing this year. And Kareem Hunt, if he played a full 17-game schedule and he was the number one running back, how close to 1,000 would he get? I think somewhat close, at least from what we've seen in these last two games. So I'm with you. I think this is the most dynamic running back room that they've had in a long time. But we do need to wait to see what Pacheco looks like once he comes back here in December.
Let me ask you this. Based off the way, because you said the offense as far as yards per play is the same as last year, right?
Yeah.
What quarterback in the NFL would have won the Super Bowl last year with that offense? Besides Patrick Mahomes, obviously.
None.
Exactly.
None.
So you have no worries whatsoever about the offense this season because of the dynamic running back room, because of the deep threat as well. The pairing of those two makes your offense basically the same thing with a bunch of different mix and match running backs instead of just a bell cow of Isaiah Pacheco that you're going to get back anyway. So to our kind of conversation earlier, there's no reason to be desperate. There's no reason to panic. We're 5-0, and the offense looks so much better than it did last year.
I wouldn't say so much better than it did last year. I think it looks that's my point. I think it looks the same as last year, but a little different, but very.
You're right.
But
different is a better word.
And what's interesting, I know we got to take a break here. Kareem Hunt's only averaging 4.2 yards a carry. Pacheco averaged 4. Carson Steele, we keep saying it, he looks so good besides the fumbles. 3.5 yards a carry. But it almost feels like how they get those yards and when they get those yards. They've done a lot better icing games away, which sometimes I do think yards per carry and sometimes yards per play can be a flawed stat. If it's 3rd and 2 and you get 2 yards, okay, that hurts your average. But
that's considered a run success rate. What was that? The tongue twister, the run-win success rate?
Yes, correct. And that's, I think, what it comes down to. I think we don't always look at yards per run and all that stuff. Look at when they come, because I think we can all agree they've been more effective in that regard this season.
And those late 3rd and 2s or those late 3rd and 2nd downs when they know you're running the football because they know you're icing the clock and trying to keep the ball away from them. Those are still counted as, a second quarter run, basically, as far as analytics goes.
Yeah. We'll take a break. We'll come back. The Zone rolls on. Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, man, if you're out there and you happen to be having some symptoms of what could be low testosterone,
Though, Jack, to Creed Humphrey,
Yeah.
I don't think people are recognizing the fact that he changed how he snaps the football. He's been great, obviously.
Hat in hand. Hey, over here, hat in hand. I'm wrong. He changed it. It looks amazing. You're right.
Right? Like, I feel like no one's talking about it. Creed, here's to you. You took those snaps higher. I welcome you with arms wide open.
I was wrong. You were right. You're handsome. I'm ugly. You're smart. I'm dumb.
Great, Happy Gilmore, but I'm gonna let you keep going there.
I think that was it.
I'm just gonna keep saying with one last breath, I will scream, Creed Humphrey, here is to you. And it has not affected his blocking. That was my concern. Cynthia Freeland, next.
college. I measured the big boys' booties for like 2 years.
She's analyzed the data.
If you can keep that big booty down, like if you are a big boy, if you're very tall and you can keep your booty down low, then you are far more successful.
She's crunched the numbers, and the results are clear.
The back of booty isn't as good, as it turns out.
If she picks a dog, she'll have the math to back it up.
It's not like Travis Kelce has done. My dog is very excited about this, just so you know.
It's Cynthia Freeland of NFL Network. Now in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Welcome back into the zone. Sterling Holmes joined now by Cynthia Freeland of NFL Network. Cynthia, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm golden. It's a great day. It's sweater weather, so I have this nice Sherpa on today, and I feel so warm and cozy. I'm getting into the fall weather right now.
Sherpa, I love it. That's fantastic.
I have to ask you though. What was that first on the intro? You're talking about measuring big booties or something like that. What was that for? Offensive linemen? Was it for boxing out?
Yeah, no, it was for offensive linemen. That's what I spent my entire master's thesis doing, was measuring if people are going to be waist benders or if they're good in pass protection, how they fare on run blocking, those types of things. So that is what you were listening to there. Yep, it is all about measuring the big boys' rear ends.
Oh, well, as a man who's big on trench play, as a dude who loves Wanye Morris and Kingsley Suamataia, could you have told me that Wanye would have made more sense this year over Kingsley based on the rear end right there?
I haven't looked into those two players specifically, but I will do that for you. However, usually it's you can see it when it's not good. It's hard to see like the differences between average and like a little bit above or below average, but you can certainly see it when it's like standard deviation different.
I love this. As a man who was horrible at math, you brought in standard deviation. I'm all the way in.
We are good.
I want to talk about some of the trades that happened around the NFL. I know you were tweeting out saying, ooh, you love a good trade right there. Amari Cooper obviously heading to the Bills. Davante Adams heading to the 2018 Green Bay Packers. What did you take away from these two trades yesterday?
Interesting notes. I mean, look, the Amari Cooper trade was basically the return on investment there could be really great because they're not spending a lot of money on acquiring him. So that is always a good thing when you're looking for how the return might go. However, I'm curious to see like how do we value the happiness of Aaron Rodgers? Like that's going to be an interesting factor too. So maybe it is worth whatever, the Davante Adams obviously had to give away like a conditional draft pick at a high enough round. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think the Amari Cooper one is low key one of the best ROI potential trades I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I thought the Amari Cooper one made a lot of sense for the Bills. Obviously, they're sitting here at 4-2. They didn't necessarily go all in. It's just a third rounder. They have wide receiver issues, but Josh Allen has looked great as always. Were you surprised as we sit here in Kansas City that the Chiefs weren't maybe more involved, more interested, at least from what we have heard in Amari Cooper? Because I just sitting here going, that Titans third rounder sure seems like should have been given up for Amari to come here to the Chiefs.
I think, I feel like maybe from an outsider standpoint, like maybe we're all kind of thinking that, but he, in some ways, he doesn't necessarily fit the profile of what the Chiefs like to bring in. He's not the biggest burner. He's not like the fastest player on the field. And I'm curious to see, like, maybe they were in on it, just not willing to pay. Maybe they valued it at a different level than the Bills did.
When it comes to Davante Adams, is there a chance that this keeps Aaron Rodgers there another year? Do you think that actually went into the equation when it came to acquiring Adams from the Raiders?
I don't know. Once you have like a fired coach and things are like feels weird, I don't know if they're thinking about I think they're thinking about this week. I'm not sure if they're able to even think about next year yet. They've got to wrap their heads around what's going on here. I mean, they still need to figure out what's going on with Bryce Huff too, right? Not Bryce Huff, he's gone, but they're missing their defensive piece that they
Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm losing my mind today slightly. We're good.
Well, Why? What's so crazy about October 16th, a Wednesday?
Part of it is like this is we saw a lot of trades on the same day, so there's usually some tipping point that makes that happen. And the fact that we didn't see Hassan Reddick get traded, it just leads me to believe that like someone's valuing something wrong. Obviously, there's some clues there. He fired his agent. Now he has Drew Rosenhaus. Those are the types of things like what is the clue here? But I'm curious to see if Hassan Reddick. I mean, obviously the Lions now have a need at pass rusher, and what's going on. So it's more a matter of like. The clues not adding up, and we spend way too much time thinking about the clues and not about his name.
No, I like the clues, though. We got to follow the clues. My name is Sterling Holmes. I'm just a couple letters off of Sherlock.
Ooh,
I love
that.
It's a couple letters off of Sherlock. So you can be my Watson, and we'll go and find this.
We'll go find it.
When it comes to a lot of these moves and trades happening in the NFL, it feels like back in the day they were really unrealistic. It almost always happened in the off season. But as GMs are getting younger and younger, I always liken it to folks playing Madden. Honestly, like I think people grew up in the Madden era, and it's not quite as taboo of trading for players in the middle of the season. Do you think we'll see a few more trades this year actually happen?
I do, and part of the other reason for that too is like. There's the new rules when it comes to like your practice squad versus your 53 versus like how we can the post-COVID world of like how this all works and the transactions work. It leaves some interesting like if you estimated your cap differently and now things are looking different mid-season. These things are all different strategies teams place and take in order to create the opportunities. And now you'll see like. An injury, and you're like, well, we're on this thing, and our pace get like, do we have to go in all in this year? Are we in that position or not?
Cynthia Freeland of NFL Network is our guest. Cynthia, I want to ask you something here. So the Chiefs this season averaged 5.6 yards per play. Do you want to take a guess on what they averaged last year in yards per play?
So it's pretty similar, 6, something like that.
It was exactly 5.6. So they've averaged the exact same 5.6 yards per play to last year's 5.6 yards per play. This leads me into my conclusion of this is who the Chiefs are. You see people all around the NFL, all these fans talking about, well, if they stop turning the ball over, or if they force more turnovers, or if this happens, or they stop dropping balls. I'm sitting here going, we have a year and a half of data showing us this is who the offense is. As someone who is very analytically driven like you are, Cynthia, is this basically who the Chiefs are and that we should probably stop trying to wait for a breakout?
I guess I just don't know what the problem is, right? Like if it's working, like teams are not giving single high coverage to Patrick Mahomes like ever again. Like it's just so sometimes you have to take what the defense gives you and create the scheme that really represents your ability to win. And in this case, maybe that for right now, that's what this means. And if there's one coach who tries to come up with the right solution. This team now, I was looking at a percentage of, in terms of this game, like, the Brock Purdy situation is he's throwing all of the passes are all air yards, and there's almost no yak, which is weird for a Kyle Shanahan offense. Lowest percentage of yak, highest percentage of air yards in the pass. And then the opposite is true for the Chiefs, right? You have the lowest air yard and the highest yak as a percentage of the whole. So, you're just getting different strategies, and part of that is how the defense is choosing to play you. So what you could maybe infer from that logically is that, defenses are more comfortable keeping Patrick Mahomes' arm in front of them as opposed to letting them hit the home run ball. That would be more what I would take from that as opposed to like some weird trend. It's not like when we see those low air yard numbers and it's guys who like are throwing behind the line of scrimmage too often.
Yeah, and I'll also point out the Chiefs are actually last in the NFL, even behind the Browns, the Bears, the Raiders, the Patriots in explosive play rates from weeks 1 to 6. That includes 10-plus yard runs or 20-plus yard passes, kind of both. The Chiefs have not been breaking off long runs, but I do think that goes into what we're talking about here is teams are not letting Mahomes get the big play. They will not let the big play beat them, which has actually opened up, I think, a lot of success for the running backs, Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, Carson Steele. And I wanted to ask you, because you are so analytically driven here, yards per carry, I think, I don't want to say is outdated, but I think it's not the most effective way to see how a running back is running the football, because I think here in Kansas City, we've all been very impressed with Kareem Hunt. We've been very impressed with Isaiah Pacheco, yet Kareem Hunt is sitting here at 4.2 yards per carry. Isaiah is 4. But it does feel like any time that they need to get 3 yards to pick up a first down or to ice away a game, they've been able to do that. What do you think is the most effective numbers to look at when you're looking about effectiveness of a running back?
I'm looking at EPA a lot more often now. I love the metric, the next gen stats metric about successful runs. So successful run are like expected points added. Okay, don't worry about EPA as like a distinct thing. Just think about it like this, right? Like, how many times are you getting a play that's being positive, so more towards a first down and touchdown for your team versus negative? And then on defense, how are you preventing those passes? So I'm looking at that, or those runs rather. So I'm looking at that and saying, like, you're right. Like, I'd rather have a positive EPA on every single play than tons of explosive plays with the way that this offense and defense is constructed. Every team, that metric and what's interesting or how it's most effective is a little different, right? You're going to have, when you close your eyes and think about the Ravens, like, you would think like they need the yards per carry probably matters for the Ravens a lot more than the implicit EPA there. But I think for the Chiefs, EPA is a far more effective way to measure that.
And I think this is great to understand. Again, the 4.2 yards for Kareem, it's just 4.2. But I think if we've watched every single game, every single snap, you see, especially towards the end of games when teams are stacking the box as the Chiefs are trying to run the clock down, and he's still able to grind out first downs, that's more effective. Again, EPA is a great number to look at. Cynthia Freeland of NFL Network is our guest. 6 weeks into the season now, what have been your biggest takeaways, just NFL-wide here, as far as what has surprised you the most? What have you like, yeah, I nailed that one, I knew that was going to happen? What have you seen through 6 weeks?
The thing that's most interesting to me that I didn't expect was probably, like, it feels like, and this isn't really relevant to the Chiefs that much, because there's no middle class of the AFC. It doesn't feel like it feels like the NFC is kind of all middle class, and then the AFC is like there's a couple of guys a couple of teams right at the top, and then there's a number who you're like, that's not even a contender, but there's no middle. And that has been really surprising this year. Like, last year prior, you've been like, wow, there's like 11 teams that could realistically go to the playoffs, good shot of it, of the 16. This year, you're kind of like, Super Bowl contenders is maybe like 3 from the AFC, right? And it's just weird, whereas the NFC is like, well, it kind of feels like whoever makes the playoffs has almost equal odds of making it to the Super Bowl, which is just a strange kind of function of this season.
Yeah, you look in the AFC, it's the Chiefs, it's Houston. I would throw Baltimore and the Bills in that equation. I wouldn't. I know the Steelers are 4-2, but we can all be real now. When it comes to the NFC, though, I think Washington's been the biggest surprise. Are they legit?
Their offense is legit, but my question is, can their defense provide the amount of support that you need once teams start? So, like Jaden Daniels, you get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt when you're, a new thing, a new entity. Teams don't have the specific Jaden Daniels game plan, or they didn't at least till maybe now they will start, right? But your defense needs to run support you a little bit, to use a baseball analogy. Like, they need to help you out a little bit so that you're not having to come up with ridiculous world-beating plays and crush everyone with your completion percentage on every single play, because it's just not it's not sustainable. So that, to me, once I see their defense take a little bit more of a, especially in the passing game, step forward, then I'll feel a lot better. But especially, they have some injuries now in the middle of that defensive front that could be pretty damning at stopping the run specifically. So until their defense gets a little bit better, I don't know if I think they're a legitimate threat, as opposed to, for how good their offense is, their defense needs to step up a little bit.
Yeah, I will say watching Jaden Daniels, though, is an absolute treat. Just a pleasure
it's so
to watch. Fun. Cynthia Freeland of NFL Network is our guest. The Chiefs take on San Fran on Sunday. What has been going on with the 49ers this year? They're 3-3. I keep losing money because I keep saying they're going to turn it around. And anytime I say they're going to turn it around, what happens? I bet on them and they lose. So maybe it's my fault. But what's going on with
fault,
Cynthia? It's my fault. Let's be real now. It's always my fault. What's going on with the 49ers this year?
It's very hard to have the level of injuries that they have on their offense, and just a lot of confusion. They didn't have people playing in the preseason, which I know now we're well into October, so you could argue that September was their preseason then for some of those players. But, they're not getting the yak we've seen, and part of that yak, like this is what I was looking at right before we started talking, that is a staple of Kyle Shanahan gets guys open in space so they can catch and run. That is what they do. And the fact that they're not able to do that has really limited their options, especially when the home run ball on the defense is something that is a fear, right? Like middle of the defense, wherever Fred Warner patrols, like stay away from that. That's going to be a hard area to complete some balls and to really run the football in that area, but you can hit the home run against them. And that's where it's going to be, that's why you kind of get this, like, sometimes they look great and sometimes they look awful. And that is they're not being themselves. Like, they're not able to execute the things, the fundamentals of what their offense is built on, and you know what? That's hard to. It's hard to win games consistently that way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess George Kittle's the one concern for KC then, right? I mean, the Chiefs have struggled against tight ends for the majority of the season. The Chiefs' defense has been outstanding overall, but that might be the one bone you would pick with them. George Kittle is starting to seem like he's coming on and getting a nicer connection with Brock Purdy. Is that the one matchup that you think that the 49ers will try to exploit in this one?
I would imagine they also try to get Debo going with some of the yak stuff that we're accustomed to from Debo, because it's weird that he's had sort of a stalling start to the season. But I think, look, George Kittle really, he's seen the end zone quite a bit. And he's been a problem. But to me, I'm just confused about Brandon Ayuk. Like what's going on there? Like you pay him, it's good. Now he hasn't had that Brandon Ayuk moment yet either. So if they could get it together and piece it together, then they're going to be really hard to stop. But I don't think we're there yet with them. Sorry, the dogs are being so crazy today.
Oh my gosh, you're okay. What kind of dogs do you have?
I have 2 rescue huskies, Gordy and Clyde, and for whatever reason, they are so amped up about this phone call.
Well, because
they just love it.
Well, who are they rooting for? Are they going for the Chiefs or Niners? That's what we need to do.
They're dogs, underdogs. They picked the Chiefs.
Oh my gosh,
the Chiefs aren't favoring this one. They're underdogs. Yeah,
that was
exactly.
crazy. That was good pull right there, by the way. As far as how you see the game playing out on Sunday, it is surprising to see the Chiefs as underdogs. Like, I actually even forgot about that. Like, I'm just so used to road, home, doesn't matter who the Chiefs are playing, they're going to be favored. That's what we're used to. They are underdogs, though. How do you see this game playing out on Sunday?
I think the hardest part I have to figure out is when you're looking at, like, I don't know how I understand we talk about how the low air yard number comes about. I don't understand how you're going to stop the Chiefs with the yak. I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't think they have the horses in that secondary. We've always talked about this. At every Super Bowl, I feel like we talked to the same thing, right? And obviously there have been 2, so it's been lucky to have this matchup twice in the Super Bowl. But the secondary has been a concern. What happens when that deep play just doesn't it just falters for them and they give up a Patrick Mahomes scores on you in 0.2 seconds type of thing? They don't really have a good answer for that. And because they're banged up in the run game, the fundamentals of what their offense relies on, as good as Brock Purdy's been this year, it's very hard to sustainably do that when you're facing increased competition on, like, defenses who are actually, like, very, very good defenses, not just middling defenses like they played.
Yeah. Cynthia Freeland of NFL Network. Cynthia, I'll let you make sure you give Gordy and Clyde lots of pets, though, okay?
I mean, they are being so naughty. I don't understand it. I don't even know how to stop it. I'm not a disciplinarian. Let's just put it that way.
Well, who's winning? Who's winning right now? Is it Gordy or?
They're actually. It's just an even fight. They just love each other and they love to fight. I don't understand. Not like they're wrestling. This is Gordy being loud though.
Oh, they're wrestling.
He's named after Gordie Howe. So.
Oh, yeah, Gordie Howe and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I get it.
Exactly.
That's perfect.
Exactly.
Cynthia, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll talk to you next week.
Yep. See ya. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Sports Radio 810 WHB. NFL Network. A lot of fun talking with her. Gordy and Clyde. You think it's Gordie Howe and Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Was that what you think? That had to be it. Only logical explanation. Maybe Clyde Drexler? Maybe she's a big NBA person, too. Could be. I wanted to ask, but her dogs were wrestling, and I think they said that it was a tied fight. It was going to go 10 rounds. But she seemed pretty enthused by the Chiefs against the Niners. I know what I'm doing. I'm ripping the Chiefs. How often do you have a chance to take the Chiefs' money line and at least be even? How often does that happen? Like 4 times in the Mahomes era?
Feels like it.
I know the playoffs was a little different, but like in the regular season, I'm ripping them. I really hope I'm not the curse, though. Jack, am I the curse if I do that? Dylan,
what power you wield? You know, what power you wield.
Well, anytime I bet on the Niners, I lose.
Don't raise your hands too quickly. There might be a natural disaster somewhere. Yeah.
Anytime I bet on the Niners, they've lost.
Take one for the team, then.
So do I need to bet on the Niners and they lose again? Like, Dylan, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I emotional hedge, and that's basically what that'd be.
Bleep that. I'm going Chiefs, baby.
Yeah, you'll never get that good odds.
Seriously. I will say, and that's what I was talking to Cynthia about, what is going on with the Niners this year. And she was talking about how the yak ability is just nowhere to be found with San Fran. The air yards are great, but guys like Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and even Kittle, they're not making plays after they catch the ball, which is a little surprising. Brandon Ayuk has, quite frankly, I think, been a massive disappointment. And I don't know how much longer you can say, well, he didn't play in the preseason and he was holding out. Like, eventually, it's October. You are 6 games in. When's the excuse going to end? I guess for me, you know, you're looking at the Chiefs and Niners matchup specifically. I think the only guy you really need to be worried about, I'm not saying you just completely forget about Deebo and Ayuk, but it's George Kittle. Is that the guy, Jack, that you're sitting here going, if you stop George Kittle, I like the Chiefs' chances?
Well, yeah, and especially because the Chiefs have struggled this year in defending tight ends, and now you deal with one of the better tight ends in the NFL. But, you know, it is a different 49ers team, one they, of course, saw in the Super Bowl not too long ago. But this is a quarterback league. We all know it's a quarterback league. And Brock Purdy, I think, in the same conversation, or is in the same conversation with Jimmy Garoppolo, that, he won a lot of games because Kyle Shanahan and the weapons around him benefited them a lot. They put him in a really good position to succeed in the NFL. But when those guys aren't successful, when those guys aren't productive, then it falls back on the talent of your quarterback. And if your quarterback was, I think system QB is such a derogatory term, it's not always a bad thing, right? If you are good at running that system, then nobody's really going to complain. But right now, I think you are seeing Brock Purdy get exposed a little bit as being the guy that a lot of people thought he would be when he took over. He was Jimmy Garoppolo 2.0 with a better running ability. Now, I think that's discrediting Brock Purdy a little bit because he's been very successful so far in his NFL career. But he's also had a lot of great weapons around him. And that's not to say Patrick Mahomes hasn't. Patrick Mahomes has had a lot of great weapons around him. But he's also shown before that when those weapons aren't around, his talent can take him over the top. And that's something I don't believe Brock Purdy can. And George Kittle, as you just brought up, is probably the number one weapon you got to worry about shutting down. You shut him down, it falls back on the quarterback, who I believe the Chiefs' defensive line will be able to put a lot of pressure on in this game.
So George Kittle this season has played in 5 games and has 5 touchdowns. That's the guy, again, Ayuk, I know, was very talented, but he's not had the season that I think a lot of folks expected. Deebo, very talented as well, but the yak is just not quite there. Jordan Mason is injured, questionable to play in this one. Obviously, no Christian McCaffrey, much to the chagrin of my fantasy football team. But you're right. Like if the Chiefs, who we have seen stop great running backs already, they've stopped great wide receivers like Jamar Chase already. It has been the tight ends, and eventually, there's only a max that he's going to put up. And they've done better, I think, in recent weeks. It was really just the Cincinnati game that really stood out. I think the Chiefs match up well against the Niners. Maybe I'm being a little naive here. I don't want to say the Niners took a step back, but what we've seen, at least defensively with KC, they match up well with this 49ers offense.
Well, what's the one thing that the 49ers do really well and have done really well for a long time? It's running the football. And what have the Chiefs done against some of those elite running backs so far this year? They shut down Derrick Henry. They were able to shut down Bijan Robinson. They were able to shut down Alvin Kamara last week. They shine at that. So if the 49ers can't get a run game in this, they can't establish the run, it's going to be a long afternoon and long evening, or early evening, I should say, for Brock Purdy, because this is a team that is built on running the football, and it was that way with Christian McCaffrey there as well. It was that way for a long time under Jimmy Garoppolo, that if they could establish the run, it just made it a living nightmare for defenses going up against them because there were so many weapons you have to worry about. But the Chiefs are good at stopping the run. They have handled far more elite running backs going into this week, and I would expect them to do the same. I mean, right now, pulling up the numbers, the 49ers are, what is it, in rushing yards per game? They're third. They average 158 yards on the ground per game. You take that away from them, it kind of goes back into my first point about Brock Purdy. Make Brock Purdy beat you. Don't let these other guys that you know are exceptional at what they do beat you. You can't let George Kittle beat you. You can't let Deebo Samuel beat you. Let Brock Purdy beat you. And I think in a couple times this year when defenses have made Brock Purdy try to beat him, he's just made the mistake, or the 49ers have collapsed late. And I could see that happening in this game. So I'm with you. I believe the Chiefs match up well because their defense can stop the run, and that's one thing the 49ers offense does really, really well.
It's still so weird to say the Chiefs defense is so good stopping the run that just this crazy change when it comes to the Chiefs defense. Offensively, how do we see the Chiefs attacking this 49ers defense, which has a lot of great players, but they've struggled this year. They gave up 23 to Minnesota. They gave up 27 to the Rams. They gave up 13 to New England. They gave up 24 and a loss to Arizona, and they gave up 24 again last week to Seattle. Is it going to be a heavy dose of Worthy Deep? Is it Travis Kelce over the middle, which, again, could be a little difficult with Fred Warner, again, still one of the best linebackers in the NFL? Yeah. Is it going to be just a grind where it's Kareem Hunt on the ground getting another 27-odd carries in this one?
I do think you have to establish the run a little bit in this game because I feel like Fred Warner will be a really difficult matchup for Travis Kelce. Where last week, Travis Kelce, and the week before that, for that matter, when Derwin James went out, or wasn't able to play, because of the suspension, Travis Kelce was able to return to his old form, right? Go 9 for 70 or have 10, 11, 12 targets in the game. I'm not sure it's going to come as that easy on Sunday, so you have to get a little bit more creative. That means getting somebody like Kareem Hunt involved, getting somebody like Carson Steele involved on short yardage situations, getting guys like Samaje Perine involved on the third and short, but more so in the passing game. Last time they were in the Bay Area, Juju Smith-Schuster had a great game against the 49ers in that blowout win, but it's a different Juju Smith-Schuster, and now I think the 49ers defense will approach handling him a little bit differently than New Orleans did. I don't think New Orleans thought Juju could have a 180-yard receiving performance, and now there's going to be a little bit more of a focus on him. So it's not so much of just trying to get Travis Kelce the ball or go over the top to Worthy. I think you really got to try to establish throwing with Kareem Hunt in this game and just take care of the football. That's what we know about this team. When they struggle offensively, it's because there's that bad pick by Mahomes or a Carson Steele fumble. You take care of the football, muddy it up with the defense, you're going to be able to win this game.
And that's what's been so impressive is the Chiefs have not taken care of the football. They've not gotten the football back necessarily a lot defensively, and yet they are still 5-0. If that turnover margin goes their way as the season progresses, watch out because I won't say they'll start blowing teams out, but it won't quite be so close. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Chiefs pressers coming up. The Zone. Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, the Chiefs bye week is
Sports Radio 810 WHB. Again, no Jason Anderson. He's out being a great dad, helping out a sick kid. So it's Dylan and myself having some fun here on this hump day. No, I shouldn't have said Dylan and myself having fun on a hump. Dylan and myself having a great Wednesday. Just having a normal Wednesday. A lot of fun. Pressers will start in just a moment. Looks like we'll be hearing from Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju coming off of a huge game. Getting on the podium today, baby. Getting on the podium. Before we get to that, whenever they happen, I wanted to bring something up that I thought was kind of funny. I had a chance to interview Ed Werder this morning, and I was talking to him about the Cowboys and Jerry Jones, and it sparked an interesting conversation because for all the talk about Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong here, Dylan, he's so unique in the NFL landscape, but isn't he basically like if any fan became a billionaire and owned a team? Isn't he exactly how anyone, like any normal human, would own a football team? You're the owner and the fan and the GM. Like, you have all the responsibility. Like, am I wrong?
No, I agree with that. I mean, I don't think he's the only one either. I think you could throw David Tepper in that realm. Like, I'm going to fire every coach that's not good after one season.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's plenty of owners. I mean, Woody Johnson.
Yeah.
I'm going to fire my coach, then make a trade based off my quarterback, and then say neither of those were based off the quarterback, even though we both know they were.
Yeah.
So, no, that's how I'd run the Jets if I didn't know anything about football either. So I'd try and bring in Aaron Rodgers and all of his buddies and let him run the franchise like I did, what was it, 07 or 08 when they had Favre there? So
Yeah.
It's almost mirror image.
It just made me laugh, though, because I found myself, I was ripping on Jera, too, a little bit, you know, because of the whole conversation he had with the media. I don't know if you heard the radio host and how he basically threatened to fire him, the hosts, because he didn't like all the questions that were being asked towards him. But he is one of the only owners who goes out and does these weekly pressers on radio shows who's that accessible. And it just made me laugh talking with Ed. I'm just sitting here going, that's probably exactly how, besides the threatening part of firing people, it's probably how I would run a football team as well. It's also probably why they haven't won a Super Bowl in 30 years, since the 90s.
He's still chasing that 95 Super Bowl with Jimmy's players. He thinks he can still do it that way, where he had Barry Switzer as the coach, and he was kind of the real leader of the team, and Barry Switzer kind of answered to him, and so did the players answered to Jerry. And they won a Super Bowl, but that was with Jimmy's players, who were upset about him firing Jimmy Johnson. So he's been chasing that, feeling since then. And I almost feel like it's the football gods kind of saying, you can't fire a guy going back to back. We're going to let you think you can do it yourself, because that's what he did. That's what he thought.
Yeah.
We're firing Jimmy. He said, I get 500 people to coach this football team. Hadn't been to the NFC Championship since.
It's the curse.
Yep.
I also said they're the anti-Chiefs. The Chiefs play every single game close. Every game comes down to the wire. The Cowboys either get blown out or blow teams out. They either roll over the second they get down 2 scores, or they get up 20 and instead of running the football, they're doing play action. That's who they are. That interview with Ed Werder, it'll be on my Twitter account coming out at HomestretchKC over the next few days. It'll also be on Around the NFL. It's a podcast I do right here for Sports Radio 810 WHB. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, Around the NFL with Sterling Holmes, or on my Twitter account, or on sportsradio810whb.com. That'll come out next week. This week's episode will be with Jonathan Taylor. The Colts running back. Interviewed Jonathan Taylor yesterday. Had a lot of fun talking with Jonathan. I did ask for fantasy football owners, of course. When's he coming back? I'm sure athletes love when you ask, hey, man, I know you're trying to come back from injury and all, but for people's fantasy football team, when's that injury going to heal? Coming back soon?
Nobody cares.
That's exactly. Was that Braden?
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
How many of those am I going to hear from Braden today when we talk after this Chiefs presser? What's the over-under set at?
4.5.
Rip the over. Rip the over. Again, Chiefs presser is coming up soon. Going back to one of my initial thoughts in the first hour, we've not talked about how good Creed Humphrey has been since the snap change. Now, I get it. Highest paid center in football. He shouldn't be having bad snaps. But that was clearly an issue last season. He went in the lab. He changed it. And there were some concerns, myself included, on how would that affect him blocking? How would it affect him getting out of his snap? Because when he switched to the dead ball snap, what happened? You got to be more upright. Here is Andy Reid.
That will not practice today is Mike Dana. He's got a pec strain. So we'll just see how he does this week as we go forward. Before the challenge of playing the 49ers, heck of a football team. Kyle does a great job with, with the team, and he and Chris have that offense rolling right now, and their defense is one of the top defenses in the NFL, and Nick heading up the defense and special teams. Brian does a great job there on special teams. So, listen, they're well coached. They've got good players. I think both teams kind of know each other, and it should just be a heck of a game. With that, time's yours.
Coach, what is it about the Niners' defense that makes them so difficult to prepare for?
Yeah, so they've got their defensive front starts with those guys, and then they've got an all-pro linebacker sitting right there. That's pretty good, along with their secondary. So they're well-rounded, but it starts with the defensive front. Those guys, they set the tempo for their defense.
Andy, what are your plans for Clyde now that he's on the active list?
Yeah, we'll just see how that goes, and how it all works in. We got to look at everything on that. So, special teams, et cetera. So we'll just. But he's good to go to practice. He knows what he's doing. He's feeling great, which is the most important thing. So.
You anticipate that he would play?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Andy, is Super Bowl footage of any use at all at this stage, based on the timeline of things they're doing differently?
Yeah, I think both teams will look at that for sure. Yeah, you're going to look at everything. I mean, over the time that we've had against each other. I mean, along with the games we've already played and they've played. So you look at all of that.
Do you think there's any consciousness at all, the notion of a rematch, or not? It's just another regular season game.
Yeah, I think that comes from you guys, and then, but I think it's two good teams playing each other for sure. I mean, that's how I look at it.
How was a bye week for you and your coaching staff?
Yeah, it was good. It was good to step back for a second. For the players in particular, they got quite a bit of time off, and coaches got a little bit of time off, and it was good for everybody there.
And you've been through this long enough to know, what are the benefits of having an early bye when compared to like one that's, say, closer to Thanksgiving?
Yeah, and we've normally had them a little 9th week or plus, somewhere in that area. Our schedule is crazy enough where you're going to get some days off, and it's important that you take advantage of those days. So that's what I would tell you. So it was good to get this one, and then how we handle the rest of the schedule is the important part. And when we have time, make sure you take the time and for recovery purposes.
And what do you attribute to? You guys had a lot of success under center against the Saints. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, we've done a little bit more of that this year, and it's just, listen, it's one more thing that we like to use, and we're able to use it a little bit more. I think the running backs love that part, obviously, but it's a good changeup. Yeah.
When you were going back during the bye, how did you feel about some of the pass protection, and then particularly the left side? How did you guys make it a little bit better there?
Yeah. Listen, we've got young guys playing the left tackle. I mean, that's not a secret, and so it's important that we just continue to progress there and get better. We know there are going to be some hiccups, and we just got to keep getting better and better as we go. That's the important thing, and the guys are working hard, and so that's kind of where we're at with that.
Will Wanya start this week?
Yeah, Wanya will start. Yeah.
Coach, Brock Purdy's obviously had a very fine career to start here. Wasn't drafted by anybody until the very last pick of the draft. He's kind of proven it over time. What do you see from him as he's gone through here, getting a couple years into this thing, where it seems to not be dropping off?
No, I think he's a heck of a player. I remember the head coach at Iowa State saying this guy changed the program around. And when you make a statement like that, and he's a good football coach, when you make a statement like that, that's bold, and it's we all see why he said it. You know, he was right on with that. I mean, this kid's he's a heck of a football player.
What was just kind of your impression so far of just how much that Juju has kind of been able to kind of pick up where he was, in 2022 when he was with you guys?
Yeah, well, first of all, he's a veteran. He works hard. He's smart. So I think all of those kind of go into that. And Pat has trust in him. So, and we as coaches have trust in him, and we try to put him in good positions for his strengths and try to utilize those. And that's, I think all of those things kind of add up to production. But the main thing is he's kept himself in great shape, and he's smart. He knows how to play the game.
He said when he got here that he watched last year and saw Rashid doing a lot of the things that he had done the year before. Does that make him just a really good piece to have around when you do lose Rashid?
Yeah, you and I have talked about this, Matt, but the guy opposite Kels ends up being very important. That they know how to play the game and can kind of do similar things that Kels can do. And it's if you can get that, then you've got something going offensively that way. So he did that before. Pringle did that before him. We've had guys in those spots that could do that. So it's that's a positive thing. Anyways, Juju's good with that, and yeah, they are similar things. They're doing similar things.
Okay, thanks, Coach.
Okay, good.
Head coach Andy Reid right there speaking. Holmes will speak in just a little bit. But just with that, Juju Smith-Schuster doing a lot of what Rashee Rice was doing before he went down with injury. Andy, again, talking about the guy opposite Kelsey is very important, and seemingly Juju understands that role, understands where to be. Andy Reid also said Wanya Morris will start this week. Says, listen, we got young guys playing left tackle. Just get better as we go. But Wanya Morris, again, starting left tackle this week. I've been impressed with Wanya Morris overall. I think he's done a fine job. I think he's done a nice job. Is there room for improvement with Wanya? Yes, there is. But overall, I think the offense has been the offensive line has been better with him versus Kingsley Suamataia in his brief action this year. In regards to who did not practice today, looks like Mike Dana did not practice with a pec strain. And then in regards to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, in regards to the plans, says we'll see how it goes, how it fits in. He's feeling good, and on if he will play this week, he says, quote, we'll see. Got a lot there, Dylan. Andy Reid sure told us a lot. Sure gave us a lot of info in regards to Clyde there. So, according to Andy Reid, we'll see. I would have to imagine it's a week off, week of practice, potentially back next week. And then he talked briefly about the bye, having an earlier bye week than traditionally. And he says, quote, our schedule is crazy enough that there'll be some days off and then went on to say you got to make sure you take advantage of those days, especially in regards to rest and recovery. We always focus on those, 3 games in 11 days, 3 in 10, however you want to break that down. But Andy is a little correct, and there's a lot of other off days sprinkled in throughout that. We can focus on the negatives, but if you want to focus on the positives, there are some extra off days sprinkled in for the Chiefs this year. You are listening to Sports Radio 810 WHB. So you got to take advantage of that. Honestly, I think having the bye this early isn't the worst thing in the world if you are going to have those, unless you're going to have the bye right after the 3 and 10 or before. I wouldn't hate that either. But you'll have some off days as the season does go on and progress. When it comes to Wanya Morris, to me this almost screams he's the starting left tackle for the rest of the season. If you weren't going to put him out or have a change for Kingsley after the bye, barring injury, this is now Wanya's job. I don't know your thoughts here, Dylan, but that's how I view that. I view it as if there was going to be a change back to Kingsley, having the bye to implement that did make sense. Since they didn't do that, you're now looking at, in my opinion, Wanya Morris left tackle for the majority, the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's also created a gap where he's not one mistake or 2 mistakes away from losing it either. So I think that's massive for him and his confidence as well, and the team's confidence. Hopefully Mahomes' confidence in his left tackle, because sometimes it does feel like he doesn't yet trust it because there's been so much shuffling at the maybe most important line position besides center.
Sure.
But yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and I have a little issue with, I don't want to say an issue with PFF. I don't like any time they have a grade that I disagree with that I have to immediately say, well, take it with a grain of salt. They don't have Wanya Morris graded very well on PFF at all. They've given him a 57.5 overall grade. I don't see that. I don't see the 78th best tackle by grade in the NFL when I've watched Wanya Morris. I've seen a guy who has struggled at times, yeah, but I've also seen him be a guy who's been more good than bad. I've seen a guy who has, anytime he's made a mistake, he rarely makes the same mistake twice. He doesn't let it compound. And that was the issue with Kingsley. I'm not trying to take a shot on a rookie, Kingsley Suamataia, who I think is going to be very good in the long run. But we saw when he had a mistake, what happened? It compounded, it snowballed, and then it was just an absolute and utter disaster. With Wanya, I go back to this, I think it was the Saints game. Who did they play before the Saints, actually? The Chiefs before the Saints. Let me go back really quickly. Here is Patrick Mahomes.
Anything special about this one, given the recent history between these teams?
Yeah, I mean, as I think it's as big as a regular season game you could play in. But I mean, they're a great football team, and I always like going up against the best, and that's what we're going up against this week. And so we understand that it's going to be a big game. We understand that it's going to take our best to win. And so you just have to have extreme focus and know that it's going to be one play that kind of decides the entire game.
You talked before about your interest in NFL history. Are you kind of aware of what this rivalry is, what its place in NFL history is now?
Yeah, in a sense. I think whenever you have 2 great football teams that meet up in the Super Bowl and meet up in all these big games, there's going to be a history between that. And so obviously we've been able to win those games, but we know how good this football team is, and we have a ton of respect for them. And so it's not like one play couldn't have changed all these football games. And so we go with that mindset of we just got to make the plays whenever they count.
When you watch the last 2 drives of last year's game, offensive drives, what goes through your mind when you see those 2 drives?
I think the biggest thing that is the guys just stepped up and made plays. I mean, it wasn't one guy. It was everybody, and guys just continue to make plays and did their job, and that's what special football teams do. And it was this close. I mean, there's a play here and there that changes, then they win, and so that's kind of the NFL, and especially when you get 2 of the top teams going up against each other.
Recognizing that part of the bye week is to get away, was there something you still wanted to hone in on with your own game?
Yeah, I mean, I got some work in, and I feel like I'm in a good spot. But, I mean, you take time off, you stay on top of your fundamentals, you stay on top of the stuff that's gotten you to where you are so far in the season. But I thought it was a good bye week. I spent some time with my family and some friends and family as well. And so did that and then got some work in fundamentally, and I'm excited for a great challenge ahead.
Just to follow up to that, what's your approach just for yourself and for your teammates, especially the younger guys, for the rest of the season as you guys kind of buckle in for this 12-game unbroken stretch to finish things out, at least in the regular season?
Yeah, you got to take it one game at a time, one day at a time. I haven't been in this situation before just because I've always had a later bye week. But I always try to stay on top of my body and making sure I'm healthy as possible. I mean, you're going to be banged up in the NFL, but you have to continue to just grind away every single day and get better. And then once you get to the playoffs, that's when you want to be playing your best football. And I think that's something that Coach Reed does a great job of, how he schedules practices, how he schedules the week to get your body best prepared for the entire season.
Patrick, speaking of that, go ahead, Pete.
What qualities make Juju Smith-Schuster a good player for that role opposite Kelsey?
Yeah, I think he just does a good job of knowing where to be at, knowing the full concept of the offense, getting himself open in man-to-man coverage, and then just doing whatever it takes to be good. I mean, he'll block, he'll catch the ball, he'll run routes, get other guys open. Just a true team player. And then when his number gets called, he goes out there and makes the play, and that's what it takes to be great in this league.
Patrick, speaking of keeping your body right, what sort of stuff do you try to do with Bobby during the season, even the bye week in particular? And what are you emphasizing right now?
Yeah, I mean, you stay on top of the little things, shoulder health, knee health, ankle health, all that different type of stuff, especially when you get a little bit extra time in the bye week. And then I try to do whatever I can to maintain my weight in the right spot. And then I even get with my QB coach and get some work in as well in that bye week. You just get a little extra time to focus on your fundamentals even more. And so doing that and then coming back in the building and continue to stay on top of that will be important to me this year.
And Bobby in particular, what's his voice in your ear during the season, at this time of season? What do you get from him?
His voice is in my ear at all times. No, it's he makes sure I stay on top of the little things. I think that's the biggest thing that's helped me throughout my career, and I've noticed a difference from my first few years to now that Bobby's up here working with me, is that he doesn't let the little things slide. And some days I don't feel as good, and he makes sure that I get that work in, and I make sure to kind of check the boxes, and so that I can be the best I can be every single week.
Did you enjoy your trip over to Kauffman Stadium?
I did. It was awesome. It was, the energy was amazing. Obviously, the Royals played great against a great baseball team and didn't come out with the win. But it was cool to see and experience that. I've been waiting for that for a long time, and hopefully it's a building block and a step in the right direction for the future. And I'm excited for those guys in the seasons to come.
How awful was Dieter in the?
Yeah, he actually wasn't that bad. I probably was worse. I was the Dieter in that situation. He's a big Yankees fan, obviously, and he's super excited, and now he gets to talk trash to Travis. So I passed that along to Trav. No, dude, you can't give him a little slither of opening. And Travis told us that he was going to the game, and all of a sudden I looked and Dieter's flying to New York. So it's can't give him an opening, no. But it's cool for him to get to do it. I mean, I'm not like a Yankees hater, but sometimes I don't want the Yankees to win because of him. Like, he's made me not want the Yankees, but I like the guys on the team. So it's I'm just watching as a fan now, which is cool.
Keep with the baseball theme. What inspired you to get involved with the Negro Leagues and the collection there?
It was cool because I didn't know Kansas City and the history of the Negro Leagues in Kansas City. And when I got here as a rookie in the rookie symposium type stuff, they took us over to the museum, and I realized how great it was, and met Bob and got to hear the history. And that was the same stuff my dad and LaTroy had talked about growing up. And my dad used to mimic Satchel Paige and some of the way he'd do his mechanics and pitch. And so it just hit me close because I had heard this stuff growing up, and now I got to hear the history of it. And so I know people talk about it, but if you haven't been, I would go over to the Negro Leagues Museum and see the history of the game and how it impacted not only baseball but the sports world in general. And so it was easy for me whenever Adidas came up to me and said, let's make something that goes with Kansas City. I was like, the Negro League Museum and the Monarchs especially. And so I'm excited for how the shoe turned out. Hopefully you go out and get them.
Actually, there's been a lot of buzz in the league last couple of days, wide receivers. That being said, with Juju, the game he had last Monday night, what's the confidence like, especially him tweeting after the game, Unk still got it?
I mean, I have extreme confidence with the guys that are on that football field. I mean, they've won games, they've won Super Bowls, they've made plays in big moments, and Brett Veach does a great job of bringing players in that can step up whenever their number is called. And so Every time I step on that football field, I feel like we have the best ability to win. And I think that's a credit to Brett Veach and Coach Reed bringing in guys that really get after it and put in the work to be great every single day.
Go to Nate next. Go ahead, Nate.
How much time in the bye week, Patrick, did you look at your guys' performance in the red zone, and is there anything you want to change when you guys do get in that sort of condensed area of the field?
Yeah, I think it's just execution. I think for me, myself, I have to just trust to throw into some of those tighter windows and make those plays and know that window might be the only opportunity you have to score a touchdown. And then we have to be able to run the ball down there and know that we get different coverages than a lot of other teams. And so instead of necessarily going in with a certain mindset, because this is how this team is played in the red zone, we have to go in with more good versus all plays. I mean, if you look at some of these teams, it's like they play man all game and then they play us. I mean, all season they play us and it's cover 2 or cover 4 and vice versa. And so we have to go in with the mindset of knowing teams are going to play us a little differently, and we have to execute and accept that challenge. And I've talked about if we've scored in some of these red zone situations, there isn't as many, I guess, questions about the offense because we're scoring in more and more points. And so eliminating turnovers, scoring in the red zone are the two things that I think we just need to work on as the season goes on.
Just to follow up on that, the tight window thing, obviously you don't throw a lot of tight window throws. Did you see stuff going back through film, particularly in the red zone, that you say, hey, there was a small crease here that maybe I could have thrown it?
Yeah, I mean, in certain situations, yeah. I mean, I remember just from not even watching on tape, but just remembering the Atlanta game, I had one where I kind of went out to the left, and it wasn't necessarily the window to throw it, but I could have maybe back shouldered the corner route, and I didn't throw it that one instance, and then we didn't get another opportunity to score that drive. And so I was just knowing that, like, you got to pick and choose when you want to take those chances. I mean, obviously with our defense and how they're playing, you don't want to necessarily put the ball in harm's way in the red zone. But whenever you get those opportunities, you can throw a ball that might be him or nobody, and the guy can make a catch. And so stuff that I'll continue to work on as the season goes on.
Patrick, when a guy like Juju comes back that you've worked with before, but it's been a while, how quickly, what's the process of just getting familiar again and getting on the same page? How does that work?
Yeah, no, I mean, it always helps when you get in the game and it just kind of works out. I mean, obviously you get the reps in practice and you try to work through the things that I don't want to say lost, but you haven't worked on in the last year of him not being here. But then it seemed like when we got in the game, it kind of just clicked. And so that was something that was big for me. And we'll continue to get him involved in the offense as well as other guys. And I'm just excited for the guys that continue to get better and better each and every week. And I think we have the guys to do it.
Thanks, Patrick.
That was Patrick Mahomes right there. I didn't know that you and Patrick, Dylan, have so much in common. You're apparently both huge NFL history buffs.
Yeah. You got to be. If you're a player, I feel like you got to be.
Well, yeah, but
especially a quarterback with the defensive coordinating and how it is based off of trees and people have defenses from the 70s still that they use. I mean, cover 2, no one can figure that out, and it was created by the Steelers, DC, back in the 70s. So, no, it's pretty good to know NFL history.
No, I'm just saying that now that I didn't know you guys were boys now. I'll tell Patrick and say, hey, if you want to learn more, my guy Dylan will hook you up.
Well, no, he knows that, so I'll see if I can get you an invite to the Halloween party.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. What are you going as?
Oh, that's a surprise. So.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then a lot of questions about Juju and him being back. Sure looks like Juju is going to speak today as well. But Juju knowing the full concept of the offense, again, Mahomes just makes it sound like he is a true team player, doing all the little things, but also knows where to be. Not just a guy that can win in zone, understanding the zone coverages, but also a guy that wins in man. I did find it was interesting. He was talking about what he was working on health-wise during the bye. Did you notice this, Dylan? He said shoulder, knee, and ankle. He said shoulder, knee, and ankle. Now, I kind of get the ankle. Shoulder obviously makes sense because you're throwing the football. You're just trying to take some time off. When he said shoulder, knee, and ankle health, I didn't know if he's talking just generic knee or if he's still talking about going all the way back to the whole Denver Broncos fiasco. I'm 1,000% looking too much into this, and I understand. I get I'm trying to read between maybe something that is not there. But when he said shoulder, knee, and ankle health during the bye, that jumped out to me. Maybe I have my tinfoil hat on, which I just traditionally wear because I think it looks good on me. But that was something that I did think stood out. Another big thing that Mahomes was speaking about was the red zone. It almost sounds like he wants to be more aggressive in the red zone. Not throwing 50-50 balls necessarily. Now, we have seen him throw a couple of interceptions in the red zone. But it does sound like he wants to at least give his receivers more of a chance. Maybe trying to fit the ball into tighter windows. He even pointed out the Atlanta Falcons game. Says he could have thrown a back shoulder, but didn't. Sounds like he wants to throw a ball in that situation, not just throw it away, but give his receiver a chance to go up and get it, which is an interesting difference from what we've seen traditionally Mahomes in the red zone in the past. Traditionally, he's going to be very conservative. Those pop passes, he'll throw it away. But it sounds like he even understands that 29th in the red zone, field goals ain't going to cut it. He also mentioned running the ball more in the red zone and how teams, they face the Chiefs differently. Team might run predominantly man all season long. They face KC. All of a sudden, now you're seeing a lot of zone. He said maybe a team runs a lot of zone in the regular season against every other team. They face the Chiefs. Well, now they're playing man. Teams play the Chiefs differently. Nothing we don't know, but it was nice to hear Mahomes talk about that. I did think one of the funnier things he said was, how bad was Dieter in the Yankees series? Dieter wasn't bad. I was the Dieter in that situation.
Had to mark that one. That was a good one.
I was the Dieter in that situation. I also love the you can't give Dieter an opening. Apparently Travis Kelce said he was going to New York to watch the game, and what happened? Dieter went right along. Who's living a better life than Dieter right now? Seriously. Doesn't get hit and gets all the perks? Gehrig. Gehrig's having himself a hell of an October.
Also got a shout out from Bob Costas. I know that, Bob Costas wasn't the most endearing figure to Kansas City sports fan, but he did like a whole piece with John Morosi on Gehrig Dieter during that game too, about the family, the names, all that stuff. It was awesome.
But how, okay, imagine you're not a Chiefs fan. How many folks understood that?
Well, judging off the replies to ML football and, APA football or whatever the hell those accounts are, they were, they didn't understand the joke or that they were friends or that, it was just
seriously
some fun. Yeah, the worst people on the internet took that as Mahomes being, anything but a good, just buddy. So,
because those people don't know what it's like to actually have a friend. That's what it comes down to. All right, I guarantee once I go back to talking about my Creed Humphrey talk and Wanya Morris that, of course, Juju's going to walk right up like last time. But what I was saying with Wanya Morris, it was against the Chargers game. If you remember specifically the Chargers game, I thought he was really good. But he got beat 2 different times, and going back to the snowball effect of what happened with Kingsley Suamataia, Wanya didn't have that happen. Wanya got beat bad 2 times in that game. But what happened the very next play? He bounced back and had potentially the 2 best reps of the game. That's a guy who understood, I got beat once, I'm not going to let it happen again. And that's why I think Mahomes should be more comfortable with Wanya at left tackle. There's no snowball effect. I'm not saying he's going to be perfect. I'm not saying that every snap is going to be outstanding. But when he has a bad snap, how often have you seen the ensuing snap also be a bad rep from Wanya? We have not seen that yet. So, I get it's hard. That's your blind side. That's a young dude. That's where the pressure most likely is going to come from. But I think Wanya Morris has done a really nice job overall. And again, going back to PFF, I'm sorry, I think they are wrong in this case. You know, it is PFF. I will, when they help my case, I use it. When they're not helping my case, I say they're wrong. Like, they help my case when I talk about Creed Humphrey. They hurt my case when I talk about Wanya Morris. I'm going to pick and choose. Hey, at least I admit it, Dylan. Okay? At least I admit it. But Wanya Morris, again, will start this week against the 49ers. I think the offensive line as a whole has been pretty good. I think Jawan Taylor's been I would say bordering great outside of the penalties, which is obviously a oxymoron because you can't have one without the other. But Jawan Taylor's actually impressed me more times than not. It's just the damn penalties. Wanya's been fine. I think he's basically been your Donovan Smith. And Creed Humphrey has not taken a step back in regards to changing his snap style, the dead ball snap. Yes, he has to stand taller, but when I was speaking with him, when he was talking about going through the changes, it wasn't a big change for him because he's already a center who is a little more upright. And at times, the concern with the dead man or the dead ball snap is getting out of your stance. Can it affect your blocking? It is not with Creed Humphrey, who, according to PFF, has been the second best center in football at a 93.7 grade. And the guards, Joe Tooney, every once in a while a little bit of rust with that torn pec he is coming back from after last season, and Trey Smith. But I think, Dylan, correct me if you think I'm wrong here, I think the offensive line has been just as good as last year, if not maybe even a little better. Sorry, he's listening right now to Juju. He's trying to see if we're going to get Juju Smith-Schuster. So I shouldn't ask you that question. I'll answer it for you. I'll be Dylan. Yeah? Good answer, Dylan. That's a Dylan answer right there. Looks like Juju Smith-Schuster will speak very, very soon. Here is Juju.
Just as far as, getting back on the same page with Patrick and picking up the offense, what was the process like, and how valuable was that Saints game to just kind of diving in and getting immersed?
Yeah, I think it's just an opportunity presented itself. I took the opportunity to work with Pat just throughout the week in my time here. And, like I said, I was very happy to be, in a game like that where I could participate to help the team out and win. Yeah.
What was the sole biggest challenge of coming back and getting acclimated into this offense?
Honestly, I think it's just the pace. The pace of this offense was, it's kind of go ramping, trying to get the playbook down. Very, very similar, very familiar with the playbook, but, there was some new stuff that I had to, get my head around and being able to keep up with this offense.
When you see guys moving from one team to another at the wide receiver position in the NFL, it seems like, this guy can come in and make a big impact right away. What's the reality for most guys?
It's tough, man. You got a total different offense. You got to get the chemistry with the quarterback. You had to, just get acclimated with a lot of guys, in that offense room, because, it's, you can have a great quarterback, great receiver, but at the same time, it does take time to build that over a period of time. Unfortunately, I had spent a year here in 22 to do that with Pat, and kind of helped me out.
When you were in New England, did you ever slip into, when I was with Pat, did you ever say anything like that, catch yourself?
No. When I was in New England, I pretty much, focused on my team and the quarterbacks that we had there and the OC and stuff.
And you talked about just the importance of the role of the receiver playing off of Kelsey and opposite him. What is it like as a receiver? You have a guy like him who's so impactful on the field. In my opinion, I think it's amazing. I think it's great. He's getting to the double team. He's getting the ones, their best player to cover him. And that kind of leaves us open as a receiver group and other guys to get open, an opportunity like that. So with him, he's very smart player. So him know how to play in space, knowing when it's man, when it's zone, something that's pretty cool playing with him.
Being in the league so many years, what's the best way to attack a bye, and how did you spend yours this past week?
Honestly, just going back home. I was here till Thursday, hanging out at the house, kind of still unpacking my stuff, and just hanging out with my girl and my two dogs. And then the weekend, I was able to go back home to spend time for my mom and brother's birthday. So, family time is very huge to me, especially been playing my whole career on the East Coast. So every time I get a little bit of time, I go back home.
Juju, it's been 2 years, but last time you were in San Fran, you had a pretty good game. I think about 7 catches, 124 yards. 2 years later, things have changed, but what do you like going into this matchup against the Niners this time around?
I mean, it's great. I mean, you talk about a great defense, all around, from their secondary to the front of their line. I think it's just the competition. These two tight ends, the team has been going at it for quite some time now, and I think it'll be nice to get back out there, playing Cali again, and just go out there and have fun.
I gotta ask, you tweeted out after last Monday night, Unk still got it. What qualifies as Unk? When do you become Unk?
When I found out I'm like one of the oldest guys in the room. But that's funny because the young guys like Xavier always make fun of me like, man, Unk, man, I don't know if you still got it. Like, when the barbecue Unk, and I'm like, for myself, I think it's funny. But at the same time, it's pretty cool that, I can be a leader in that room.
Do you put pressure on yourself, especially given some of the injuries that you've seen earlier in that room, that more is going to be expected of you?
I think I always have pressure on myself, whether the guys who are playing or not. I feel like it's something I've always lived with is playing with pressure. It kind of makes me feel, like a better person, a better player. Always critiquing myself on how I can do better for the team. But I think it does help out, with, everyone in that room wanting to just do better for this team.
When did you become that? Was this the first time that you've been kind of Unk in the room?
Yeah. I wasn't Unk in New England just because you had a couple guys that are older, around the same age, but a little bit older, and then coming here, to a room where you got a bunch of young guys, and it's pretty much just me and Jay Watt. But with me having the most experience in the room, kind of carry on.
What kind of wisdom are you imparting onto them as Unk?
I mean, honestly, I think I always say like this place right here is so special. Don't take it for granted. And, playing here, you got to, make every opportunity count. And not only that, though, everyone in the room is so blessed to be here, but at the same time, they're also just so, like you said, putting pressure on themselves just to do good. They just want to be their best version, for this team. And, for myself, what I could just advise to them is like, man, if you have a bad play, kind of just move on from it, next play, and then, bounce back and don't let that play affect you throughout the whole game.
Couple more. Only 27. Just how, as you look back, do you think starting so young in the NFL has kind of helped you in these days?
Helped me so much, man. You talk about, being able to read defenses, being able to see coverages, being able to see so many different things that kind of pretty much helps you to the next standard, the next level. And being able to share that with the young guys is pretty cool because, a lot of these guys, they know the coverages, but to be aware and to give little bit tips in here, hey, like, this defensive player is doing this person's doing this, and pretty much helps out the team.
Nick?
Juju, despite what offense you've been in, when you're in a condensed spot like the red zone like that, what have been the keys as a receiver to kind of create some of those windows for a quarterback?
Honestly, just spacing, being able to get open in those tight areas in space, and playing here with Pat, that's something that you got to be able to do because he's like a magician out there when he's just running around in circles, doing half spins, and then just throwing the ball no look. So that's just something that in these tight spots of spaces, being able to get open, knowing where, when you run your route, just knowing what everybody else has and kind of get that feel of where the spaces are.
Thanks, Juju.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
That was Juju Smith-Schuster. We're going to take a break, but Andy Reid is brought to you by Green Grass Cattle Company. That presser right there, you can buy their 21-day dry-aged, grass-fed, grain-finished, farm-to-table beef from their Weston store or online at greengrasscattleco.com. By the way, Patrick's right there, presser brought to you by Robert Brogdon, that QB press conference, GEHA. All right, GEHA. You could be on the 50 at GEHA Field for the official coin toss right there at a Chiefs home game this season. Enter to win at chiefs.com/GEHA. GEHA is the proud partner of the Kansas City Chiefs. Looks like Clark Hunt is coming soon. So Dylan is not happy back there. Dylan is angry. And we can't take a break, can we? We got to wait. Got to wait for good old Clark. So we'll take a break after Clark Hunt. We might be behind. Just like the Chiefs. What do we do when the Chiefs get behind? What happens? They win. So, Dylan, don't worry about the breaks. When we get behind on the breaks, what happens, Dylan?
We win.
Just like the Chiefs, we win.
Yep.
Damn, I should be a head coach. Fire you up right there, didn't I? Got you going.
Yeah, find me a wall to run through.
Well, it's glass. That's how I can see you. They're kind of padded walls, too, so you might be okay, actually. Again, Clark Hunt will be speaking shortly for the Kansas City Chiefs. Juju Smith-Schuster was talking about coming back to KC, asked what was the hardest part. He said the pace was. Not necessarily all the playbook and how there are a couple of new nuances that he has to learn here being back in KC, but says the pace is the hardest part. I also love the fact that Xavier Worthy making fun of his age, some of the younger wide receivers calling him Unk, saying, hey, yo, when's the barbecue, Unk? Where's the barbecue at? Also talking about he wasn't Unk in New England, but he's Uncle when he comes back to KC. You know what's really depressing? Everyone's calling him the old guy. Everyone's calling him Uncle. Hey, yo, Unk. When's the barbecue? You still got it, Unk? He's 27 years old. Dog, everyone's making fun of his age and he's 27? You kidding me? Man, Dylan, that made me feel old, my guy. Yo, Unk, when's the barbecue? And he's 27.
I feel seen.
Oh, that hurt. That hurts. What am I, Grandpa? Am I a great uncle now? What's Joe Tooney? Great Unk? Pain. Juju went on to talk about how playing in Kansas City is so special. Also going and saying, quote, everyone is so blessed to be here. It is interesting, right? Like, very reflective after his 1 year in New England. Extremely reflective after his 1 year in New England. Going to KC, New England for a year, back in KC. It is pretty good hearing him talk about, because if you're a free agent, right? If you're a player in KC, right? And you're now hearing, quote, Unk talk about how good it is here, how you're blessed to be here. That's what you want to hear. You know, you talk about how these wide receiver free agents choose other teams, which I always laugh. You hear guys like Calvin Ridley complaining, like, dude, you went to the Titans. What did you think was going to happen? You chose the money. But seeing Juju talk about this gives me hope that maybe, just maybe, we'll see some of these free agents take a comparable deal that's slightly less and come be a Kansas City Chief. Just saying. But if you are someone like Calvin Ridley, how the bleep can you complain? You chose the Titans. You chose to go to that dumpster fire of you knew Will Levis was the quarterback. Who did you think was stepping in there? Prime Joe Montana? Like, when you are a wide receiver and now you complain about targets or the uncatchable targets you're receiving, dude, you chose to go to the Titans. Here is Clark Hunt.
I'm glad everybody's here. Before I get going, I want to express my condolences to the Hall family on the passing of Don Hall Sr. He was a true Kansas City icon who did so much for the city. He leaves a tremendous legacy and will be greatly missed. For the Chiefs, it's been a great start to the season. Obviously, we're excited to be coming out of the bye week at 5-0. We've certainly experienced some adversity with the injuries that we've had, and want to compliment the guys who've come in and stepped up in those positions. I think it's a real credit to both Andy Reid and Brett Veach with the job that they've done of taking the next man up and putting him in a position to succeed. With that, I'm happy to open it up to questions.
Clark, I asked Andy this when Kareem first came back, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it as well. When, as you recall, when that video came out a few years ago, the Chiefs moved quickly to release him. How do you reconcile that with bringing him back now?
Yeah, well, going back 6 years ago, we were obviously very disappointed by the actions that we saw in that video and how he handled it afterwards. As we talked about it as an organization here a few weeks ago, both Brett and Andy expressed to me that they felt confident that he had matured from that he had learned from the mistake, gotten the help that he had needed, and as a result, we felt comfortable in bringing him back.
Have you talked to him yet? When he was up here with us, he hadn't spoken to you yet. Have you spoken with him?
I have. I have. He expressed to me his gratitude for being back here. He knows it's a really good fit for him from a career standpoint. Knows that he left here under some difficult circumstances and is very glad to be back and getting to play for our great fans.
Quick question, as it relates to Tom Brady and his ownership that you all approved of. I know going to the finance, you all approved of unanimously. I imagine he did it so yesterday. Was there ever any thought process to making sure? I mean, I know the NFL put restrictions on his broadcasting, but having him choose between one or the other, because it seems like it's going to hamper what he does for Fox, but it also seems somewhat unfair as a literally an owner in the NFL calling games in special division opponents and stuff.
Well, we certainly talked about the subject of him being an owner as well as a broadcaster, and the commissioner, after consulting with many owners, decided that the right step to take was to limit his participation in the production meetings, and that was enough to get everybody comfortable with the dual roles. So it did pass unanimously everybody yesterday, so I think everybody felt very comfortable with that.
Is there another quarterback you could envision one day being an owner in this league?
I'm sure he won't be the last.
Clark, you led the committee to allow private equity investment teams. My understanding is that's not a route you guys are pursuing. Just wondered why is it not, particularly as you outlined stadium investment potentially being one of the benefits of that?
Yeah, well, every organization and the families who are involved are going to make their own decisions, and there are a lot of things that play into a decision to sell a stake in the team, whether you're selling it to private equity or selling it to another individual. And we've talked about it as a family, and everybody is very excited about the Chiefs and what we're doing on the field and the opportunities that we have in front of us, and we just don't feel it's the right time to sell a stake in the team.
So has any of the other ownership groups started down that road with that at this point yet? And I know there's certain limitations on what private equity companies can get involved in.
Yeah.
What's that process going to be?
Yeah, so it's a very compressed time frame with the league just approving it at the end of August and the paperwork literally being finalized over the last several weeks. My understanding is that there are several teams that are pursuing transactions. One or two of those might close before year end, but I would expect that there'll be many others that will close next year and in the years to come.
Clark, what are your latest thoughts, or what can you share about the timeline of your decision making on stadium situation?
So for the last 3 months or so, since I had a chance to visit with y'all at training camp, we've been working on creating some options, not only for the stadium, but also for potentially a new training facility. We've been looking at a lot of sites on both the Kansas and Missouri sides, as well as talking to the political leaders in Missouri about perhaps renovating Arrowhead again. We're not at the end of that process at all. We continue to have good conversations, and we're hopeful that by the spring we'll have some direction. I certainly don't expect to have anything finalized by that point, but I'd like to know, the direction that we're headed in that time frame.
I know you guys had outlined a timeline, not a deadline, in training camp that potentially at the end of the year. Is you saying that it's more likely going to be a little bit later than that?
Yeah, I would just reiterate what I said at training camp, which is it's very hard to put a timeline on a stadium process, and so we want to move as quickly as we can. The real deadline that we have is in February of 2031 when our lease runs out here at GEHA Field at Arrowhead, and there's a lot of work that will need to go into either renovating the stadium or building a new one. So we do feel like we need to work as expeditiously as possible.
Well, I know some of it's self-evident, but I wonder what the 3-4 things you might point to would be that are what takes so long to make this process thorough and get where you want to get?
Probably the most difficult thing is there are a lot of stakeholders when you're involved in a stadium process. You've got the local city, the county, the state that all have to be part of those conversations. Obviously, there's a lot of work on our side in terms of figuring out what the right opportunity is for us economically. We also are very cognizant of making sure that we keep the community and our fans in mind. We want to make sure that where we end up will work for many generations of Chiefs fans.
Darren? Clark, obviously, I believe Arrowhead is going to be used as a polling location in a few weeks, but on the political side, Harrison Butker has created a PAC. Are you fine with your players being involved politically as they are like that?
One of the things I talk to the players about every year at training camp is using their platform to make a difference. Obviously, we have players on both sides of the political spectrum, on both sides of whichever controversial issue you want to bring up. And so I'm not at all concerned when our players use their platform to try to make a difference for what they believe in.
Clark, back to the stadium, the state of Kansas, they did the work with the Star Bonds, and that deadline is going to be July 1 or whatever. What do you need to have happen in the state of Missouri through all the levels, city, county, whatever? There's not going to be anything on the ballot this November. Do you anticipate, I guess, that if something gets done in Missouri, it won't be a valid issue at this point? It's going to have to be another vehicle to get that done?
I think there are a lot of avenues that we could pursue with Missouri on financing for a renovation of GHA Field at Arrowhead. The effort that failed earlier this year had a couple of stakeholders, with the state being part of it, as well as the county. And the city historically has also had a small involvement with the stadium. So I would anticipate that it would be a combination of all three of those. Certainly something that has slowed us down a little bit is the election coming up here in 3 weeks. We're going to have a change in the governor of the state. And so once we get past that, we think that'll really open up the opportunity for us to have more constructive conversations.
From the outside looking in, it looks, I know there's complicated parts to this, it looks like Kansas did a whole bunch of work for this, and it looks easier to maybe go do that. Is it not easier just to take that? Is it worth something more, work harder on this side of the state line?
Well, we're not looking for what's easiest. We're looking for the right opportunity. And we're grateful for the work that was done on the Kansas side that opens that up as an opportunity.
For the last two with Nick and then Nate. Go Nick. Clark, for you, from talking to Andy in that airport in Philadelphia 11 years ago to where you are now, do you feel like you guys have been able to build everything that you envisioned culture-wise when you were talking to him?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an argument that we've maybe exceeded my expectations. Certainly I envisioned building a team that could consistently compete for championships, and obviously Andy and Brett and their coaching staff and football operations team have done an unbelievable job of that. But you mentioned the culture, and I think that's one of the things that's so special about this team is the culture. Andy Reid gets a lot of credit for having established that culture, but we wouldn't have what we have both on the field and off without the players and the player leadership specifically. Patrick, Travis, Chris Jones, those veteran players do a tremendous job of helping perpetuate the culture that Andy established when he came here 11 plus years ago.
Nate?
Clark, you mentioned the possibility of obviously different locations on both sides. Can you share what some of those locations might be on each side of the border? And I guess how important is it that the stadium and the practice facility be sort of tied together instead of maybe, I know Mark had said at some point one might be in one location and the stadium might be in another.
Yeah, it wouldn't be helpful to the process for me to mention specific sites other than obviously, here at the Truman Sports Complex, which is an obvious one. In regards to your second question, the practice facility and the stadium don't have to be next to each other going forward. And on the Missouri side, that's something that we're contemplating is perhaps another location in Missouri for a training facility.
Could they both be in the same state though, or can you visit one and the other?
I think really everything's on the table in that regard. There's some logic to having them in the same state, but I don't think they have to be.
Build a bigger interview room than this.
We're going to build a lot of things that are bigger, for sure. All right, thanks.
That was Clark Hunt right there. We need to take a break, so we'll take a break right here. Sports Radio 810 WHB. you go an hour long without a break, things have to change. Mick Schaefer will now join us on Friday. Braden Gall will join us around 1:15 to talk college football. I do want to talk in the next segment about some of the things that Clark Hunt said in regards to the new stadium, as well as in regards to Kareem Hunt. So we'll talk a lot more Chiefs before Braden Gall joins us around 1:15. Again, Mick Schaefer will join us on Friday. Dylan, we're going to do it because, again, when the Chiefs get behind, they win. When we get behind on breaks, what happens, Dylan?
We win.
We win. We'll take a break. We'll come back. More Sports Radio, 810 WHB coming up. Welcome back to the Zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB. All right, a couple takeaways from that Clark Hunt presser right there. Talked about Kareem Hunt. Says, quote, obviously 6 years ago, we were very disappointed with what we saw on video. Went on to say Andy and Brett both felt they were comfortable with him and his maturity. And then, quote, Kareem was very grateful and very glad to be back. So sounds like Clark Hunt talked with Andy and Brett and said that they felt confident in that Kareem Hunt had matured from that situation. And then obviously felt comfortable enough to bring him back. And Kareem Hunt so far says he has expressed his gratitude in being able to come back, and he's rewarded the Chiefs with a lot of, I would say a lot. I'd say some great games so far coming back, taking up and picking up where Isaiah Pacheco left off. In regards to the stadium topic, Clark Hunt says, quote, we've been looking at a lot of sites on both sides. We continue to have good conversations. I'd like to know the direction we're heading. It's very hard to put a timeline on a stadium process. Talking about trying to find a direction of where they're going by the spring. Obviously, there's still some time to do it, but still relatively up in the air in regards to the stadium vote. All right, Dylan. Let's have some fun before Braden comes on. You sound thrilled. You are still looking at all these commercials and all the bad. Have fun. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry. Things always will work out in the end. Because like Lincoln Park said, Dylan, in the end, it doesn't even matter. We'll be okay.
I need to learn how to fly because Adam Dravetta is going to throw me off that balcony here come at 2 o'clock. So I really need to practice my, the flapping of the wings because the only man that's going to be upset with me is Adam. And I'd never like to disappoint Adam. So
hey, he can't catch you if you run. I like your speed.
I don't know.
Over
I trust me. No, I have no speed.
Yeah,
Zero speed.
Like, you can outrun
I'm also
him.
cornered here. There's no real escape in the studio.
Yeah,
so
with no Jason here, it's a 2-on-3 with you and me versus K-Dog, Petro, and Dravetta. I don't like our
we're
odds.
losing that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like our odds right there. I do want to talk a little bit before we bring on Braden Gall. I don't know if enough credit has been given to the Chiefs secondary for what they have done post L'Jarius Sneed. The Chiefs secondary has been one of the best secondaries in all of football. And it hasn't just been Trent McDuffie. It hasn't been the usual suspects. It's been Jalen Watson really stepping up and putting in, let me see if I can find his some PFF numbers here. Putting in just a great season overall. Jalen Watson has played like a legitimate CB2. A legitimate CB2. All right, hear me out. You want to have some fun here, Dylan? This is fun, right?
Yeah.
One of these players ranks 33rd out of 184 cornerbacks in coverage grade. That's a legit CB2, right? 33rd out of 184. That is literally 32 CB1s, the start of CB2. And the other guy, his coverage grade is 174th out of 184 corners. Do you want to take a guess at which corners I'm talking about? One corner.
I have no idea.
One corner's 33rd. One's 174th.
On Chiefs?
One's on the Chiefs, and one is not on the Chiefs.
I don't know. Who is it?
I know you're busy back there. Jalen Watson is 33rd in the NFL in coverage grade. 33rd in the entire NFL. That is a CB2. He is doing better than I think a lot of folks expected. The man who is 174th out of 184 corners in coverage grade, L'Jarius Sneed. I'm not trying to take a knock on L'Jarius. That's not what I'm trying to do. But the Chiefs make guys have their best careers in the secondary right here in KC. The Chiefs make these guys who might have been really good corners, great secondary members elsewhere, their best seasons happen as a Chief. The one outlier for the most part has actually been Travarius Ward. Travarius Ward has, I think, grown even more so with the 49ers. But when you look here at the Kansas City Chiefs and you look at what they were able to develop L'Jarius Sneed into, the career he had as a Kansas City Chief, and then now what he's doing as a Tennessee Titan, it's hard not to put some credit and some credence into Dave Merritt, Spagnuolo, and the defense as a whole. Again, L'Jarius has time to figure it out. He's 27 years old, but the Chiefs knew what they were doing when they traded him. The Chiefs now have extra draft capital, that extra third-rounder from the Tennessee Titans. Again, I would have liked it to be used on Amari Cooper. That's moot at this point. The Chiefs were able to move on from L'Jarius Sneed, gain a third-rounder, and they're still able to have legit CB2 production bordering on CB1 in Jalen Watson. Again, give Watson a ton of credit. Don't want to take anything away from him. But the Chiefs were able to identify a seventh-rounder, the traits that they covet, and find a way to develop him into what he has become right now. So when you have guys like Trent McDuffie, like Jalen Watson, when you see the production typically from a Brian Cook, when you have the, again, PFF does not like this player, but when you have the physicality of a Justin Reed, the intelligence of a Justin Reed, what you're left with is a great secondary bordering on elite, even if some of the players are not highly touted. The Chiefs are a machine when it comes to identifying and developed talent in the secondary. And again, Jalen Watson, again, just trying to go to that point of how good Watson has been, not necessarily trying to take a shot on L'Jarius and as far as what he has done this season. But the Chiefs knew what they were doing. I hope they know what they're doing with wide receiver, because secondary has been a little different than wide receiver. All right, I think I have time now to finish my thoughts on the offensive line. I have time now. I have a couple minutes. I can finish my thoughts on the offensive line. Going back to Creed Humphrey and the dead ball snap, apologize. He is second in the NFL according to PFF. His pass block win rate is elite. Creed Humphrey has changed his snap, changed what he has done. I get he's the highest paid center in the NFL, and he should be doing this, but I still want to applaud someone for adjusting multiple years into his NFL career. Not anyone that I know of is talking about this, and I like to give credit where credit is due. Creed Humphrey changed how he snaps the football, and he's been just as good as ever. There have been many studies that have come out and said when you snap the ball, like the way Creed is doing, a lot of times it can take, you can take a step back in how you actually are blocking as a center because you have to be more upright because it takes a second to get out of your stance. It's a multitude of factors. That has not been the issue with Creed. So again, I tip my hat. And then finally, going back to Wanya Morris in regard to the offensive line, I know people are probably calling me crazy. They're sitting here going, stop giving credit to this guy who has been averaged at best. He's a second-year tackle who I think fits best as a right tackle, who filled in because he did not win the starting job because Kingsley Suamataia won it out of camp. And he's filled in, and I think he's done a fine job overall. I will applaud that. I think Wanya Morris should be giving Mahomes a little more comfortability in the pocket. Mahomes has bailed out very early, and we have heard Andy Reid talk a few times post-game saying, hey, he's going to look back at the tape and realize he actually had a longer time in the pocket than he originally thought. And I think part of that's because Wanya Morris has been an upgrade over Kingsley. Again, I think Kingsley Suamataia will be good as his career progresses. But this year in 2024, and again, hopefully in February 2025, I trust Wanya Morris just a little more. All right, we'll take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk with Braden Gall, talking some college football right here on the Zone. Sports Radio 810 WHB.
It's time to catch up with our college football insider, Braden Gall.
Nobody cares.
Now in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Everyone has their own taste, and mine is just better.
Back in the zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB. Sterling Holmes joined now by Braden Gall. Braden, how you doing?
I'm doing great. What's going on?
I know you're bummed that Jason's not here, so now you have to deal with me. It's the Missouri of the SEC. I get it.
Jason who? What?
All right.
I'm good.
First real question here, Braden. Is Vandy good? Like, is Vanderbilt actually good now? What's happening?
So the short answer is, look, if you're going to take Missouri to, basically overtime at the end of the game, you're going to beat Alabama, you're going to beat Virginia Tech, you're going to beat Kentucky on the road. I don't know how the answer is no. You have a winning record, you're going to get to 5 wins, and you've got to beat a team that is beatable, whether it's Auburn or South Carolina or whatever, like over the final stretch of the season, and you're a bowl team, and you've made huge progress as a program. I think strength and conditioning, they made a change in strength and conditioning in February. Most everyone around the program credits that change as one of the biggest and most important changes they've made. I think if you look at programs like Missouri and Kentucky around the SEC over time, when you invest and sort of show patience, it tends to work for some of those programs if you get the right coach. I'm a sucker for a coach's alma mater. I love Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State right now. I'm just a sucker for that stuff. And Clark Lee loves Vanderbilt as much as anybody. So it's not that that's going to help him win or not, but I just think it's part of the story. And then you go get a quarterback and a sort of an offensive trio when you combine Tim Beck and Jerry Kill as the coaches around him that were all together at New Mexico State. Pavia is a special player. Outside of Cutler, I know we were talking about this last week, I think he's the most talented and most dynamic, certainly the most dynamic player they've had at quarterback maybe ever at Vanderbilt. And it's just, as long as he's healthy, he gives them a chance to win every time. And so you put all that together, and you get a magical night where you can beat Alabama. Virginia Tech's maybe not as good. Missouri's a step back from where they were last year, and you almost beat them. Like Kentucky's, I feel like Mark Stoops could retire this year at the end of the year. I said that all summer. I thought this would be his last year. So, sure, you can add some context to it, but, you still got to go out and play, and they're going out and playing a very different brand of football. The thing about the Alabama loss was that they lined up and just beat them straight up. There was no flukiness to it. Yeah, they had a 4th down and a pick 6, but that's football. And so when they needed to, they ran the football in Alabama and kept them off the field. I think 42 minutes or something time of possession. So long story short, the answer is yes, they're good.
Well, let's stick in the SEC. Obviously, a big one this week. You got Alabama and you have Tennessee, two of the outside of, let's say, Georgia and the Texas, two of the other teams that are expected to make the college football playoffs. What have you learned from these two teams up to this point so far? What do you expect on Saturday?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. What do we actually know about these two? Because we've seen a lot of them. We know that Nico Iamaleava is not there yet. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It doesn't mean it won't happen this weekend, but we know that he's not there yet. The lines of scrimmage for both these teams are very good. We kind of know that. We know the secondary for Alabama is going to be elite at some point, but it's not there yet. We know Jalen Milroe is extremely talented and is as good as advertised with Kalen DeBoer as his coach. So you kind of okay, Tennessee, and I had the wife and the kids in the stadium last week for the Florida game. The crowd was absolutely one of the main reasons Tennessee came back and won that football game. That was an electric evening at Neyland Stadium. If the football was not electric, the crowd was, and that's going to be a huge factor. But after you say all of that, you look at this game and you go, I think Alabama's a little bit better. Okay, they're a 2 or 3 point favorite, but I have literally no clue what's going to happen, and I think anything is on the table. Alabama, big win. Tennessee, big win. Close game. I just think everything's possible. It's an elimination game in theory for the college football playoff, which adds even greater stakes to a great rivalry. I'm sort of just, hey, let's sit back and watch and enjoy, I think is where I'm at. And I think it's the same for Oregon, Ohio State last week. It's interesting, and not to go off on a tangent here, but the team, when you get Oregon, Ohio State, or Georgia, Bama, there's no real stakes yet because you know that it could happen again, or both teams could still make the playoff. You're still learning. It's data acquisition. But last week, LSU, Ole Miss was already sort of an elimination game. And so what's happened is you now have this second tier of games, which is Alabama, Tennessee is one of them, where it feels like you're in this elimination mode. And elimination mode creates desperation and entertainment. And so I think that's what you're going to get in this game. LSU and Texas A&M are going to play soon coming up. That's an elimination game. You can kind of look around the country and see what these games look like, and that they could be, I'm not going to say that Nebraska, Indiana is an elimination game, but it's like this second tier of games. Like Kansas State's played a bunch of these games, honestly, the last few weeks. Like they're this close to being out of it, but they keep finding ways to sort of win some of these games. They've got big ones down the stretch, but like it's this new tier of game between really good football teams, like Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, Kansas State. Like all these teams with one loss are all playoff caliber teams. The question is who's going to make it through their schedule. Ole Miss has not. They've already lost the second time. And so that second loss is real critical, because then there's a chance you just get left out even if you do win the rest of your games.
Brayton Gall is our guest. And, let's stick with K-State for a second here, because I've been very, very impressed with what they've done so far. That BYU game clearly was the outlier, and BYU obviously is a lot better than I guess a lot of people expected heading into this year. They're 6-0, 3-0 in the Big 12, now ranked 13 in the nation. What have you seen from K-State so far? I've been impressed with Avery Johnson. That Colorado game, I think we learned a lot, that even though they were up a lot, then they gave the lead, they were able to find a way to claw back and win that one. I guess for me, that almost showed me a lot about K-State not rolling over, even with the injury to Avery Johnson.
Is it fair to say, like, one of the things I learned is the coaching staff needs to run the football more in the fourth quarter? I mean,
yes.
Don't get me wrong, Colorado's fun. They're great. They're a total chaos agent. Like, you don't know what's going to happen on any given drive. Like, their receivers are they're so good at chunk plays, and that's not an anti-Kansas State thing. That's just a Colorado thing. But, I mean, Giddens is so good right now. Like, you've got to, what does he have? Like, almost 400 yards rushing the last 2 weeks. He's averaging, 10 yards to carry over that span. Like, you got to get him the football. You got to get him the football in space with the passing game as well. And I agree that through some early season, I don't want to even call it struggle, but like Avery Johnson, I'm actually kind of working on something about this as it pertains to very talented first-year quarterbacks. A couple interceptions against BYU, didn't play a great football game, was pretty solid most of the season before that, if not elite yet. He hadn't kind of figured that part out. But you're starting to see the talent come to the surface against Oklahoma State and Colorado the last couple of weeks. And I'm seeing this with Nico at Tennessee, Raiola at Nebraska, Connor Wigman at Texas A&M. These guys that are like former 5-stars, extremely talented, but sort of in their first real year starting, some of whom have new coordinators. And it just kind of like we're so quick to ordain these guys, and we do it in the NFL as well, where it's like, oh, you're a top 10 draft pick, you got to be great right away. That's not how football works sometimes. And all these guys are going to get to it in their own time, not to tie Kansas State into this multiple ways, but Colin Klein clearly was kind of figuring things out at Texas A&M, and now it seems like, not to bring up a bad memory, but Connor Wigman and Colin Klein clearly on the same page against Missouri. So it just takes some time. Avery Johnson's talent against Oklahoma State was just painfully obvious that he does things that other people can't do. And you saw a little bit of that against Colorado as well, and you're going to start seeing that more consistently. So I think we're learning that Avery is the real deal. It's going to take a little time. It's starting to come around. Run the football. This is absolutely a championship contender in the Big 12. I think the other thing we learned and probably already knew about the conference in general is that you have no clue what's going to happen on any given Saturday.
Yes.
We just don't. Like, the balance between, look at Arizona State even, which, again, Arizona State-Cincinnati, the old Big East Pac-12 rivalry. Arizona State's so much better than we expected, but even on a week-to-week basis, they look like a different team. You don't know what you're going to get. They're only they're a 2-point underdog to Cincinnati. Cincinnati hasn't looked any good this year. So what's going on there? It's just Oklahoma State is a 10-point underdog to BYU. If you'd have told me that at the beginning of the year, I would have laughed at you. So I think they are hopefully a model of consistency in a conference where you get anything but consistency. That's probably why Iowa State is doing what they're doing, because their defense their defense is designed, like literally that's the purpose of the defense, is to make everything slow and steady. Like that's the whole point of the defense that Heacock runs. So,
Braden, it's Iowa. They have Iowa in their name. Iowa, Iowa State. This is what they do.
That's true. That's true. Although Iowa State has at times been a offense and defensive football team. Like there's a guy playing in the Super Bowl last year that would agree with that. So
fair.
There's slightly different performance at quarterback at Iowa State, I would say, over the years. And
I was going to say,
yeah, go ahead.
No. Really quickly on KU, we don't have to spend a lot of time on KU, obviously, but where do they go from here? Because this is so disappointing after what they've built. I still think Lance Leipold's the guy, right? Like they have the correct head coach. Is this all the OC leaving was too much hyped on Daniels, and it really was being like where does the Jayhawk program go?
So this is one of those where you're just like it's hard to explain because Kentucky's dealing with this. There's other teams that deal with this. Like you are a victim of your own success sometimes, and I think it's important that you, like honestly what you said is what I was going to say, which is this is unfortunate. You don't like what's happening. There's all the reasons we could point to. The quarterback's not been good. The coordinator's changed. The roster around him maybe isn't as deep or what. Like we can point to him. The conference is more unpredictable, as we just talked about. There's a lot of things. People are catching up to Leipold in terms of the scheme and everything else. But at the end of the day, like this was one of the worst programs. Like the big picture is what's important here. One of the worst programs in all of college football at the power level, and you've got a coach who has fixed that almost immediately. You got to you're going to deal with some swings. Like college football is not linear. You don't automatically go from 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 wins and just keep getting better. Despite the portal and despite all the changes, there is still sort of a stock market type deal where you're up, 3 games one year and then you're back and then you're up again. And, 3 years of this type of performance, then you could start to have a conversation about the coach. But right now, you've gone from one of the worst programs to one of the better programs in the conference. You gotta remember that first and foremost.
All right, Braden, before I let you go, you were right. I have to say that. Scheduling my wedding on the Mizzou football game I thought was going to be awesome. The wedding was literally incredible, and we even had a chance to watch the Mizzou game before the ceremony and everything. We got a chance to watch it, that was the bad part, actually, because I never took into account what if Mizzou just bleeps the bed. Like, if they would have been even close in the game, it would have been a great day. Come on, Mizzou. So you were right, Braden.
So what you're saying is I was right because like there actually is this weird kind of fun element to a bunch of people having a communal experience around a football team during a wedding. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it was like awesome. That. But besides the fact that Mizzou was so bad, like,
right.
But yes.
And the timing worked out great, right? Because like the wedding was in the evening. I'm assuming there were like 4 or 5 o'clock ish, and then you had an 11 a.m. kick, so like everybody could hang out and watch the game. And yes, of course, you'd like a W. But at least you're all together, Yes. At least you're all together.
See, Braden, we are on the forefront of this. Football at weddings before the wedding is electric. That's all I'm going to say. Braden Gall, make sure you follow him on the X at Braden Gall, owner of 440 Sports. Braden, always fun, man.
Yep. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
We'll take a break. We'll come back. More Zone. Sports Radio 810 WHB. 810 WHB. Thank you again to Brandon Gall of 440 Sports. A lot of fun talking some college football with him. Braden. Did I say Brandon? I knew it was. I didn't say Brandon when I was talking to him, at least. It's Braden Gall.
That never happens on this show. Unacceptable.
I only say it when he's off, right? When he's on the show, I say Braden. When he's off, I say Brandon.
We have an intro of our boss essentially being called James Anderson. So, no, that is not the
It's
first
awesome.
time.
It's great. Yeah, we're good. Happens. I also love that we're on the same page, though. Saturday weddings, when you have a college football game at 11 o'clock, if your alma mater, is absolutely electric.
Make sure it's the homecoming game. Make sure it's a game you're going to win by 40.
Make sure they're not playing a team that kicks their ass. That's all I'm saying. Thanks, Mizzou. Appreciate that. This is the homecoming week. It's against Auburn. They better beat Auburn. I'll be mad. All right, Dylan. No Mick here today. He's coming back on Friday. So this feels like a very Mick thing to ask. Let's get a little whimsical with it. Okay, so we're going to get whimsical. I think I saw the dumbest quote potentially of all time. Tell me if I'm wrong. This is Travis Hunter on why he should win the Heisman over the Boise State running back.
Ashton Jeanty.
Ashton Jeanty, thank you. He has 95 carries for 1,000 yards. If I had 95 catches, how many yards do you think I'd have? Is that or is that not one of the most absurd comments you have ever heard?
Well, I mean, it's kind of expected from the source. You know, there's not a lot of PR 101 classes, I feel like, that happen at Colorado for the football team. But
No, there is. It's actually hype yourself up as much as possible.
Right, yeah. It's from the head coach. But, I mean, the dude is usually those players that are stars at every level. This kid has been a star on every single team, including the one he's on right now.
Correct, yes.
And probably the one he'll go to next in the professionals.
Correct.
They're going to have this kind of mindset. It's why they are the way they are and why they're that good, usually. But, I know. I agree with you.
Dog.
Coming off a loss to K-State, it's kind of tough. I understand where you're coming from for sure.
No, it's hilarious. He has 95 carries for 1,000 yards. If I had 95 catches, how many yards would I? But you don't. That's not how football works.
Right. And also, like, he's their entire offense, so I get kind of I feel like what he's saying a little bit, but
Dog, Travis Hunter is their entire weapons.
No, I agree.
Like, it's just I'm actually, Travis Hunter should be at least top 2 for Heisman. This is not me trying to be anti Travis Hunter. Dude's incredible, phenomenal player. It's him and Ashton Jeanty as the 1-2 in the Heisman. What I'm saying is, that's one of the most absurd comparisons I have heard in my entire life. He has 95 carries for 1,000 yards. Could you imagine how many yards I'd have on 95 catches? Sorry, Dylan. I think that's absurd. I think it's a silly question, a silly thing to say. And it, of course, coming from Colorado. Just makes me laugh. Now, if he said it as a joke, then I'd laugh and be, haha, that's funny. No, he said it, and he sure seemed serious. That's the difference. Going back to KU really quickly, just wanted to kind of tie a bow on what we were talking about. I'm glad Braden and myself are on the same page in regards to Kansas. If you are a KU Jayhawk fan, if you are a fan of Jayhawk football, don't punt on, before this season, back-to-back really good years and great buildup of goodwill, because we're on the same page. Just because you exceed expectations 2 years prior, yes, expectations change, but don't be, what did he call it? What did he say? Don't cannibalize yourself from exceeding expectations early on. The Jayhawks are going to be fine, I think, going forward. Okay? It's a little bit like the Royals in baseball this year. Like, we're all disappointed that they didn't go to the ALCS and then the World Series. But when you look back and you go, they went from one of the worst teams in football to making the playoffs. That KU football went from one of the worst situations, one of the worst teams in recent memory of all of college football, into what they've become the previous 2 seasons. Don't burn that bridge down just yet. Yes, this year is bad. There's no sugarcoating it. This year is brutal. But don't throw away everything and threaten to fire Lance and all this other situations. There's a new stadium coming your way. Lawrence, a new stadium's getting built. You'll have a new quarterback next year. But Lance Leipold has been a phenomenal builder of that program. He is a great head coach. Sure, maybe the OC is not going the right way, and the OC did a great job last year and the year prior for the Jayhawks offense. I get that. This is a bad year that happens. Think of where you were 5 years ago, pre-Lance, 4 years ago. There are expectations now, yes. But try and take a little bigger picture. It's wild that a Mizzou man. But try and have the bigger picture here, KU fans. It'll be okay going forward. We'll take a break. We'll come back. More Zone. Sports Radio 810 WHB. back as we wrap up the zone right here. Sports Radio 810 WHB. Sterling Holmes, Dylan Michaels, Jason Anderson should be back tomorrow. Just being a good dad, helping out a sick kid at home. So, Jason, here's to you. This bud's for you. I feel like I should like hold up like a beer or something when I say like cheers to you. Dylan, do we need to get like a Busch Light or something after this? Just crush one? I feel like we do. Feels like that's something we need to do.
Sure. It's like a real man of genius.
It's like a real man of genius. I feel like I nailed that.
You did, actually.
I'm being facetious, of course. I don't think I did. All right. Chris Jones. I feel bad for Aiden Hutchinson, clearly, right? That sucks. You hate injury for any player, and what happened to Aiden Hutchinson was atrocious. That was terrifying. Do not watch if you have a squeamish stomach. Is Chris Jones now the leader, though, for Defensive Player of the Year? It was Aiden. Like, seriously, is Chris Jones... Micah Parsons has missed some games. Myles Garrett's been good, but that's a horrendous team. The Chiefs are 5-0. The defensive line of KC has not been great. Turk Wharton's been really good, but the edges have not been solid. Chris Jones, 4 sacks in 5 games. 28 pressures, which is the second most of any interior defensive lineman in the NFL. PFF loves him. All the metrics, the eye test, he gets doubled almost more, if not more than any other player in the NFL. Still puts up numbers. Dylan, is this the year Chris Jones wins Defensive Player of the Year?
Kind of feels like the Yankees, Boston Celtics, if not now, when, right? Like, kind of feels like this is his best shot with that, with the way he's playing.
Yeah.
Menahue coming back hopefully is going to help his numbers increase because he's not going to have so much. I mean, he will. He'll still get most of the double teams, but
should alleviate some.
Should alleviate some.
Which is actually leading into my next point here. Charles Menahue tweeted out 43 minutes ago, quote, "I've always defended adversity," I think he meant to say defeated, "and exceeded my own expectations. You a clown if you don't see it or believe it." Went on to say, quote, "I'm coming back to get what I deserve. The biggest bleep, anything else ain't for me. Done speaking till I'm back. Been too humble. Folks forget what I did in less games than your favorite player." Charles sounds like a dude who's ready to come back and make an impact. We'll see when he comes back. Obviously, you can talk on the X. But when he comes back, I do think he's going to make an impact alongside Chris Jones. I'm saying it right now. Chris Jones, this is his year. Chris Jones, DPOY. Up next, the program with Soren Petro. We'll be back tomorrow with Jason. Until then, we are out.